Okay, should we start again? This session is about journalism in Central and Eastern Europe. As I've said to all the panelists, it needn't confine itself to that, but okay. As I've said to the finalists and to others, it needn't confine itself to that because we want to pick up some of the themes which ran so fascinatingly this morning, and they went beyond Central and Eastern Europe. But we also want to talk about journalism in the countries there, and the panelists are, in the main, not all, based there and are journalists there. So the people we have are Liam Hoare in the center there, who started a column in Vienna, which he still does, which is one of the most enlightening things, I think, about Austria, about Austrian politics, social life, so on. We have, is it Madeleine Nexutu, who's based in Chisinau in Moldova. He covers politics and he's an investigative journalist as well. With him is another Moldovan, Mariana Rata, also in investigative journalism, and founder, I think, of the Media Alternative Association. Oh, I beg your pardon. Wojciech, who spoke this morning, is a Polish journalist. He started the Visegrad Insight, which is invaluable for knowing about Central Europe, not just Poland, but further abroad. And who have I not got? I've got Nick Thorpe, who also you've heard this morning, who is based in Budapest. He, I think, convinced the BBC that he should be a correspondent from Budapest and has covered this neck of the woods for, 30 years?
39.
39 years. So that's your panel. I'm going to ask Wojciech to start.
Thank you, John. As we agreed, that I'll try to say a few things and then stop as quick as I can to actually provoke another round of this discussion that was so fascinating in the first part of the day. And kudos to the panel that you did it really well. The subject of this, I was looking again, is journalism in Central Europe, right? So, That's a bit. No. But I actually felt obliged to ask this question in the previous panel because I do believe that we talk awfully a lot about politics, and we talked about awfully a lot about politics, and I'm also very curious and happy to talk about. I intend also to talk about politics, but I think the subject about journalism is fascinating to me for two reasons. One, that it is also about power and politics, and the nature of journalism relationship to power is really fundamental, and we should try to grasp it. But even more important is the curiosity which drives journalism. Curiosity is unfulfilled, and this was my comment about supply and demand. I think there is an unfulfilled curiosity about what people actually think. We live in revolutionary times. These are prime times for any journalism, and that was already observable during the first Trump term and a number of other occasions in history. But if we look, we take a step back because we're not doing journalism about Trump. But we live in the times that are defined by this as maybe Trump era, whatever it is. We can probably agree that these are revolutionary times, and these are times that are. There is a great curiosity in covering what is going on and trying to understand it. And I think what is missing is I mean, we may still not have all the answers about politics and the power games, and there are investigations to be carried out. But I wanted to bring everyone's attention to the basic fact that we don't know about the really powerful people, which is the demos, the voters. We don't cover them in journalism enough, and we might have missed what people think in the northern England just before Brexit, and how they live their lives and what are their stories. We might have been probably, better prepared, or maybe even bringing up the issues that could be better answered during that time. And I think similarly here we can ask topics of what average Romanians in more remote areas are thinking about. And it's not an easy task. And I wanted to compliment every one of you who are involved particularly in local journalism and local stories. That is the foundation of democracy. I mean, news outlets like mine and the national, international news outlets, they will survive forever, because that's the nature of this big political struggles, that they are easy to cover. The real struggle and the real effort is with the local, with the nearly impossible to sustain, but still going on journalism that touches the important news of the day, of the communities, and sometimes brings attention beyond beyond the immediate events, trying to grasp and portray the voices that altogether collectively comprise, they make democracy. And this is the glue that I think is missing. And as we are hearing reports for already over a decade or more about the end of local journalism, and that has started also in the United States. There was a decline of local journalism and local press observable. Due, some would say, because of technological nature, because the abundance of free media, the media with free access, and enough of them captured the attention of people, they would draw the business model away from local journalism, which became even less sustainable. And there were a number of shocks, including the financial crisis that was driving away advertisement, and it was again the worst for the local news outlets. That might be somewhere in the roots, and the big questions for another seminars that are also held here by the Ratio Forum about the problems with democracy. More fundamental, but on the practical level, I think what is really interesting, and I wanted to provoke you take the floor. Also, you report about the challenge of reporting the local news, also reporting what the society thinks, what are the daily problems in the communities. That is of course missing, and I think it is giving the fuel to the rise of many populists, and which we surely have to debate, and I have to report now. My political element comes in, and I'll be very brief. That in Poland we just had also presidential debate of 17. Well, not all 17 candidates took part in it, but on Friday there was a debate, in front of the TV cameras, of many candidates. 17 of them are registered, 17 candidates in the presidential race in Poland that is taking place. First round on the 18th of May, and then the second round will take place on the 1st of June, took part. And I'm unhappy to report that we also have the Kalin-Georgescu types, two of them. A certain individual called Maciak, who collected 100,000 signatures, is really an interesting case, because how can you imagine a person who is a local politician, who in Poland essentially brings in the narrative sponsored by Russia or Belarus, and he got his 5-time Prime TV just this Friday, has collected 1,298 votes in 2023 general elections and 2,558 votes in mayor's elections a year after 2024, has collected all of a sudden over 100,000 signatures to run in the presidential race. Well, his YouTube might help to understand that a bit. I checked the numbers, and he's got all of a sudden 66,000 subscribers and followers and 47,000 views on an individual show. But it doesn't add up in my imagination. I'm not a specialist in that, to the fact that he gathered 100,000 votes. Maybe there is something underreported in the local communities and why people would still be interested in him. But I think we can also assume that there is a special operation going on with someone helping him to get signatures and run his elections. But this does not nullify this. That's if this is proven right, that still does not nullify the problem with underreported local remote communities. I've been traveling in the past year to some of those, and they really have, in most remote areas and also those close to the border in Poland, lack of ability to express the problems, like preparedness for potential war efforts. And people are quite aware of that. This is their daily situation and life choices they're making about where to invest some of the money they hard earn in the daily economic struggle. And it turns out that for the middle class in countries close to Kaliningrad, like Elbląg, which used to be very prosperous when there was no war, but the war situation is now closing opportunities. People are investing in immobilities and moving away, and they're going somewhere else, to Spain even. But then still they vote, and people who are left behind also vote. And I think the journalism duty here is somehow not served well.
Just to add one, his colleague Adam Jasser, also from Poland, should come in on this perhaps later on. One thing which I learned, I think, is it Loredana? She, when I was talking to her over the lunchtime, she mentioned that when she was covering the far right here, the AUR rallies, that when Simeon came on the stage, the people in the rallies who had been more or less didn't care much about the journalists who were there, suddenly turned extremely hostile. And what they were saying, and it speaks to something that both you and Adam have talked about, was that they felt they were simply either not represented in the media or represented only to be diabolized, to made into stupid, ignorant peasants. And there may have been something in that. They may have been at least partly right, and that may be something which is spread abroad. I was trying to bring that up, and just at the end of the last session, that the reporting on the far hard new right tends to be limited to hostility rather than investigation and understanding of why they are what they are and what made them so. But we'll maybe come back to that. Liam, can you go second?
Thank you very much.
Try again.
Take two. Okay. Thank you. So I want to just try and relate the morning session to what I'm going to say now, because I am here from Vienna, a country where the far right also won elections in 2024. And there was this question this morning of, well, why did that take place here? One crucial difference, of course, is that everybody was surprised, supposedly, about what happened here in Romania, whereas nobody was surprised that the far right won elections in Austria in 2024. I think, so the first thing to say is that there's a similar, in a way, grab bag of issues that the far right in Austria used to kind of construct this coalition of voters, as I say, by taking a series of sort of minority oppositional positions. One would be COVID skepticism, vaccine skepticism, promotion of alternative treatments for COVID. Another would be Ukraine. The far right in Austria, the Freedom Party, is the only party who is, one could say, pro-Russia. It's the only party that is very clearly anti-European. And actually the things that they demanded during recent coalition negotiations with the center-right were quite shocking in many ways. We can come back to that. One thing that was not mentioned this morning, I don't think, was LGBTQ and gender issues. And what I find very interesting is that the Freedom Party has more or less wholesale imported the rhetoric and agenda of the American far right and basically just translated it into German. So we have, opposition to Drag Queen Story Hour. There are very few of those taking place in Vienna every year, but somehow this is the life and death issue of our time. And the final one is immigration, except that's kind of an exception because, contrary to all these other issues, the other political parties in Austria are very happy to imitate the far right on immigration. It's just that, as I think, not to quote Jean-Marie Le Pen at this event, but Jean-Marie Le Pen once said, "Why would voters buy the copy when they can have the original?" And so if you're somebody who cares about immigration, you're really going to vote for the far right and not a party that says one thing and does a different thing. Long term, something else that was raised this morning was, the rise of the far right in Austria is a story that goes back to the late 80s. And it is a symptom of this long-term distrust in the political system itself. And the distrust in what was then the two-party duopoly, the fragmentation of the political system, and also then the end of this idea of party loyalty, that you just you vote for the same party at every election, in part because you come from a certain class or because your family voted this way. Now only people, I would say, over the age of 65 in Austria do that. Otherwise, people tend to fluctuate quite wildly between voting for the far right in one election and then the Liberals and then the Greens. And does that make sense? No, but that's how people behave. And then a final issue also related to something this morning is that the far right in Austria was in many ways a pioneer when it came to the construction of an alternative media landscape. So the far right Freedom Party has its own newspaper, which is published weekly. It has its own TV station, sort of YouTube channel, but they call it a TV station, FPÖ TV. And they recently put a lot of money into building a new studio for that station. And obviously they're also active on social media, Facebook, I'd say principally. And while there certainly is at least one conventional tabloid newspaper that more or less reads like Freedom Party propaganda, the fact of the matter is that they no longer actually need the conventional mainstream media to reach people. They hold press conferences at which they don't take questions from the media, and so that their messages get out there. But otherwise, they are very happy to have a sort of TV station in which resembles a news channel, but is really just propaganda, and communicate directly to voters that way, uninterrupted. And I think that is something that other parties in Europe have since tried to imitate. Okay.
Thanks. Thank you. how far is there a narrative within Austria that, after all, it was Nazi during the war? This is just coming back to what Austria really is. There's certainly that in Germany. Is it the same there?
I remember being at an event at Mauthausen concentration camp about 7 years ago, at which the head of the Jewish community said that the Freedom Party are not Nazis. They are the successors to the predecessors of the Nazis. By which he meant that this is a political tradition which has existed in Austria for at least 100 years. And by this tradition, I mean what is referred to as like the quote-unquote third camp of Austrian politics, in distinction to the socialists on the one side and sort of conservatives on the other, which was traditionally a mix of Greater German nationalists and national liberals, really. And so this strain of Greater German nationalism, for example, or just far-right politics has predates the Nazis. So I would not want to say simply these people are Nazis. It is true that the contemporary Freedom Party has used Nazi language. Its leader, Herbert Kickl, said he wanted to be the Volkskanzler, the People's Chancellor, which is a term first used in Nazi propaganda in 1933 to refer to Hitler. It also creates this kind of dichotomy between us and them, the Freedom Party and the rest, by referring to the other parties as the system parties, which also is part of Nazi rhetoric. I think what's also just on this question you raised, one more thing before I forget, is that one thing that in a way shocked me when I relocated to Austria about 8 years ago is the extent to which the Freedom Party is simply a normalized part of the political system. It is treated much like any other party in that it is invited to have its role in discussion programs on television and takes part in political debates and so on, and is not treated with the kind of opprobrium that you would think. And I think that's part of, perhaps we could say, one reason why the Freedom Party has this continued role in Austrian politics is that there's not a kind of, except perhaps in certain social milieus, there's not like it's not unacceptable to vote for them. You see what I mean? Yeah.
Mariana, could you be next?
I will turn back to first session that we had today, and we discussed about hybrid influence in hybrid war in the elections in Romania. I will tell you directly, it's not hybrid war, it's Russian influence and interference in elections in Romania. And for us journalists from Moldova, fighting against Russian influence and interference is like a daily routine. But I want to start to explain how it's actually look like our audiovisual space in the Republic of Moldova. The main population of the Republic of Moldova are Moldavian citizens, so people who speak Romanian language, and there are around 80% of our all population of the country. But unfortunately, when they select what they want to watch on TV, 70% of the public select to watch Russian language content. We have a very small minority of Russian people in Moldova, around 3% of people. But 70% of our population are consuming Russian language content.
Most people speak Russian.
They speak Romanian, but it's a habit from the previous Soviet Union. So this habit didn't change, and I will explain why. Actually, we have very divided society. We live in Moldova in the same country, but in two parallel worlds. On TD, we have around 70 TV channels that both broadcast or rebroadcast in the Republic of Moldova. And around 70% of these TV channels are Russian language TV channels that rebroadcast content from Russian Federation. Independent TV channels in the Republic of Moldova are mostly pro-European, and they broadcast in Romanian language. One of the TV channel that I'm a co-founder, TD8, it's a bilingual TV channel, but mostly we produce content in Romanian language. And we are in a very strong competitions with other independent TV channels, also pro-European TV channels, that also they have content in Romanian language. So we are in a strong competition between us, and we don't disturb the audiences of Russian TV channels. So we are all independent media, pro-European media. We are in our parallel world with the world of Russian influence and Russian propaganda. The most popular TV channels in the Republic of Moldova is, who know Russian media market, is RTR, is public TV channels from Russian Federation. 2 years ago, the government decided to close this TV channel, and they actually in 2 weeks changed the label of the TV channel, and now the same TV channel with the same content is named Cinema One, and it's the most popular TV channel in the Republic of Moldova. People consume this content. Why? Not because they want to consume propaganda and disinformation, but because Russian propaganda. So they consume Russian content because it's entertainment content, and this entertainment content, it's full of disinformation, manipulation, and full of glorification of Russian world. 1 year ago, we decided we should do something, because we are in the parallel world with these people who are vulnerable to Russian propaganda, and we create a lot of infotainment content, but they didn't consume infotainment content. We should to do something, and we decided to open a new TV channel targeted to Russian consuming people. 6 months ago, we launched this TV channel. The name is very symbolical. It's First TV, like Russian Первый канал. It's a pro-European but Russian language TV channel. Yeah, Russian is a propagandistical TV channel, very popular in Moldova, but this channel was banned more than 10 years ago, I think, in Moldova. What we observed after we decided to open this new TV channel in Russian language, with a similar model than Russian TV channels that we have in Moldova, with a lot of entertainment, but this entertainment is Ukrainian entertainment content in Russian language. So in only 6 months, this TV channel became one of the most popular in the top 10 of audiences in our country. So what we observed is that we have a huge opportunity to discuss with this Russian language speaking public in Moldova, who are also Moldavian citizens and Moldavian speaking, but they consume in Russian language, but we don't use this opportunity. I don't know, maybe something will change in the future, but it's a rarity in this moment. Speaking about the challenges of media in Moldova, I think our biggest problem is financial independence of media in Moldova. And you know, financial independence, it's related with editorial independence. Independent media in Moldova actually exists thanks to grants. We have a lot of very good small online teams that they depend on 100% of grants from US, from UK and European Union. After decision of Trump administration decision to close USAID and to stop financing media in East Europe, a lot of small but very qualitative media teams in Moldova were in the danger to close. Actually, we have here one of my colleagues who is co-founder of one very good but small investigative team. And after this decision, they actually had really big problems from the team Cusens. Also, Rise Moldova, you know, Rise Romania, who is very popular for their investigation, was in a big danger to close in Moldova because of decision of Trump administrations. So, media, independent media, is very vulnerable because she is underfunded. But Russian propagandistical media in Moldova, these media don't have financial problems. They have unlimited financial support directly by Moscow, by oligarchs or by politicians from Moldova. So it's again a big challenge for us to be in competition with somebody who have huge budget and could create very qualitative entertainment content. And we try to fight using infotainment content. Speaking about content and a subject that we have in media, independent media, it's full of talk shows, political talk shows with the same figures of the same person. And of course, for people, it's not so interesting that because in short time they decide to let the independent media and go to watch Russian TV channels. I will give you an example. First 2 weeks after the war in Ukraine started, it was a tactic, I think, a tactic of Russian propaganda to ban the subject about the war. They didn't say anything about the war in Ukraine. But independent TV channels, TV8, one of the TV channels that I'm a co-founder, and other TV channels in Moldova decided to put an area 24 hours from 24 about the war in Ukraine. So we had a lot of news, talk show, explanations about what's happened in Ukraine, who is aggressor, why Russian attack Ukrainian. First poll after these 2 weeks of start of Russian invasion in Ukraine said that people in Moldova think that Russia is an aggressor in Ukraine. After these 2 weeks, because of fatigue and people left, actually the audiences of independent media in this period of time increased a lot. So what we saw is that people who watch Russian TV channel, they migrated on independent TV channel because they were very interesting in what happened in the neighborhood of Moldova. After 2 weeks, they left our TV channels. They go to watch the movies, series, and entertainment show on Russian TV channels. And next polls say that people in Moldova, more of them think that Ukrainian is responsible for the war in their country. So Russian propaganda work very soft. They use entertainment to change the mind of people, and we should to reinvite ourselves, understanding how they change our countries actually in a very small, soft model.
That's quite sinister. So the shows, the entertainment shows, are more important than propaganda, pure propaganda. They make Russia look welcoming and fun and so forth.
Yeah, there are social entertainment shows, but with very soft narratives about how good it's a Russian man, how good is Russian politicians, why Putin is so strong and why they love Putin. But it's not like directly that, because if you ask people who watch Russian TV channel if they consume propaganda, they will say no. But actually, I don't watch news. Because they could not understand how persuasive is this propaganda.
Kind of soft power.
Yeah.
Making Putin look attractive must itself be
Yeah.
an entertainment in its own right. Adam, do you want to come in at this point, or you want to leave it for a bit?
Unless you have a specific question.
No. I just wanted you to talk as you did earlier today.
As far as I remember, I just asked a question, but
Well, ask another one. Come on. You haven't got only just one. But we can go to someone else. All right. Okay. Let's continue on the Moldovan track.
Okay,
All right.
let's continue on the
Madeline, yeah.
Moldovan landscape, media landscape. It's very interesting. First of all, I want to congratulate Ratio Democracy Center for looking at this map. You know, I cannot see Moldova, but there are a lot of Moldovans in this room. So thank you for inviting us today to speak about Moldova. I wanted also to make a short comment related to the previous topic when it comes to elections in Romania. Actually, there was a sign before the elections in Romania that Russia will implicate itself much in Romanian election, meaning that candidate at the presidency of Moldova back in October 20, Stoianoglu was his name. He was the former head of the prosecution office in Moldova, and it was the counter candidate of Maia Sandu, the current president of Moldova, made an interesting experiment, meaning that he paid influencers in Romania. Actually, there were, we call them maneliști, you know, the guys who are singing this oriental songs and so on, but they have a lot of followers on TikTok and other platforms. He paid them, you know, to campaign for him. Actually, they didn't know who this Stoianoglu from Moldova was, but they said he is a good man, he is a very strong leader, he should be voted in Moldova and so on. And when I saw that, for me at least as an investigative journalist, raised a lot of questions. Why they are doing this? And when I saw the outcome of the presidential elections in Romania, and I understood that it was a test. It was a test coming from Moldova. And the institution that should be on guard on this issue, they were not. You know, there were a lot of signals coming from Moldova that this will happen in the Romanian presidential elections. And that was an interesting episode for me, watching that a Moldovan candidate for presidency, he is campaigning in Romania through this fame up, or I don't know how he paid them exactly. But anyway, he paid three. There were three influencers, if I'm not mistaken. And that was a sign for me that Russia will meddle in Romanian elections. And of course, in Moldova, we'll have parliamentary elections this year. And what happened in Romania will influence a lot what will be happening in the autumn in Moldova, because everybody's watching the Romanian presidential election, and more they are trying to figure it out how the situation will not repeat itself in the fall, meaning that they should ban Telegram or TikTok or other online media, or they should let them be, not to be accused of censorship, and face this hybrid war, because every day in Moldova, I think we are under siege from Russian propaganda and hybrid war. We did not spoke about how this hybrid war began. You know, the Gerasimov doctrine from Russia, and how Europe is under siege. I think Romania is in denial right now that is under Russian propaganda, siege, and so on. I don't know what they are thinking about, but I can see it very clearly from Chisinau, what hybrid war means, and we are living it every day. It's I like to joke about it that one crazy man is throwing a rock into a lake, and 10 wise men will dive in to get it out. You know, this is what we are doing every day, debunking pro-Russian propaganda. So we are not talking about a phenomenon, we are living it every day. We are struggling to inform correctly the people of Moldova.
And the polls show that the next president of Romania may well be the man who created and leads a party called the Alliance for the Union of Romania, i.e. Bringing the two countries together again. What effect will that have, do you think? Is it a popular view? Will people vote for him because they want a union of the two countries?
I think George Simeon is not anymore very popular leader in Moldova. He used to be one, because before becoming a politician, he was an activist, and he ran this platform in 2012, vowing for the reunification of the two states. Now he is having a very strange position. I heard a question, I think it was yesterday, if Russia will attack Moldova, what Romania should do. And he said it will do nothing, because it is in NATO. Romania is a NATO member state, and it cannot do anything. But if you were asking George Simeon like 4 or 5 years ago what Romania should do about it, for sure he would say that Romania should fight and defend Moldova. So he shifted his narratives regarding Moldova a lot. I cannot define what will happen if George Simeon will become president. But anyway, from the judicial point of view, he's banned in Moldova and in Ukraine. And it would be a strange situation to have a Romanian president banned in the neighborhood country, and taking into account all the ties between Romania and Moldova, and also Romania is the biggest trade partner of Moldova. A quarter of Moldovan goods goes to Romania directly.
Okay, Madeleine, thank you. Nick, you go next.
Thank you very much. Time for a little optimism.
Not kidding.
A country called Hungary hasn't been mentioned yet today, I don't think. And as I've been living there for 39 years and have become a citizen of that beautiful country, which is not so far away from here, I thought I should mention it in the discussion, not least because I think the juxtaposition of not only of the history, but also of the media landscape and also of the institutional landscape in each of our countries. I think one of my criticisms of Eastern Europe as adopted East European is often we here in Eastern Europe don't learn enough from one another. We're always looking to what's going on in Western Europe or elsewhere in the world. And there's often quite interesting things, positive and negative, happening in our neighbouring countries. Just one example that popped up this morning when Mircea Toma was talking about the Audiovisual Council, and Mircea Barbu was suggesting ways in which perhaps the Audiovisual Council in Romania might improve its work, or different institutional. That's unimaginable where I live in Hungary. The Audiovisual Council in Hungary is a slave of the Orbán government. When we talk about the institution of the ombudsman, for example, in different countries, I'm aware in Poland of a strong tradition of the ombudsman acting as a genuine check and balance on the at least under the previous. I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite up to date on the latest ombudsman. In a similar way, in Croatia, the ombudsman has been, has a record of being very strong and resilient and standing up to the prime minister of the day in Croatia, and calling him out often in the past for hate speech, for example. Again, it's unimaginable that in Hungary that the ombudsman or the office of the ombudsperson would call out the prime minister. So there's a lot of interesting things going on. And if we knew more about each other's countries, we could learn from that. I promise to be a little bit positive. One hears a lot about, the takeover of media in Hungary by the Orban government over the last 14 years. As a long-standing journalist who knows many Hungarian journalists, many Hungarian media, of course there has been a big effort by the Orban government, quite a successful one in some ways, to take over parts of the independent media, of the media landscape. But I'm constantly impressed every day by the strength and resilience of the independent media in Hungary and how they've survived the 15 recent years of Mr. Orban in power. And one of the ways they've done that, with the help of the pandemic, is when the Orban government put pressure on state companies and on foreign, especially German companies, not to place advertisements anymore in the media. They turned to their own public, rather gloomily, in a kind of Hungarian word. There's a word in the Hungarian language, sajnos, which means unfortunately or alas. A lot of Hungarian media imagined, as they turned to their own public, their own readers, that they would never subscribe, that they would never begin a paid subscription, but in fact they did. So now you have 444, Telex, Valas Online, papers that are pretty much supported on a subscription basis by their loyal readers who want to read an independent media. So as we talk about, changing funding models and so on, it's been a very positive thing. They haven't got rich. They can't quite replace the advertisements from Mercedes or BMW that they no longer get. But they do get the odd advertisement from Volvo, for example, as well, from occasional companies that haven't got a strategic agreement with the Orban government. So, but another reason, apart from the fact that Hungarian media, independent media, have managed to persuade their public to pay for it, another reason for their success is they're simply better. The standard of investigative journalism, the standard of political debate, because they're not just slavishly anti-Orban, they've been very critical of the opposition as well in Hungary. So a high standard, and this gets grudging appreciation even from government party Fidesz politicians who lament the low standard of their own media, which is kind of funny. So those are two very positive things in Hungary. A downside, of course, is that there are subjects, because of the strength of the government media, that have become almost taboo. It's taboo in Hungary, even pretty much in the independent media, to actually write much in a positive vein about migrants, about the situation in Ukraine, or about LGBT issues, though they try. But no, it's not taboo, but it's in a socially conservative country, it's difficult and unpopular to stand up for the LGBT community or to suggest that Russia is to blame for the invasion of Ukraine. So there are issues like that. And also perhaps it's quite hard to find in the independent media in Hungary voices that have anything good to say about the Fidesz government, whereas there must surely... So they've almost been forced into no longer being independent media, but rather being opposition media. So that is a downside of that. there's an image that came to my mind. That was really what I wanted to. Oh no, there's something else I wanted to say on the LGBT thing, because you were asking about this. As we speak this afternoon, people in Budapest are gathering, several thousand, perhaps more, in grey clothes. This is another aspect I like about Hungary very much is the humour. This is a demonstration today organised by the Twin-Tailed Dog Party, which, apart from the pirates perhaps in the Czech Republic, might not be easily imaginable in Romania or in other parts of the region.
Or for dogs, for that matter.
Yes. But on Monday, the Fidesz majority in Parliament will pass an amendment, the 15th Amendment to the Hungarian Constitution, making it illegal to hold demonstrations if those demonstrations are portraying, let alone popularizing, homosexuality or other forms of what the government regards as sort of deviant sexuality, including transgender. So if you publicize that, and there will be demonstrations organized by other groups in Budapest on Monday, but the Twin-Tailed Dog Party has organized, the reason they're all dressing up in grey today is as a protest, a kind of ironic protest against everyone wearing rainbow-coloured clothes on Monday. So this is actually a pro-LGBT demonstration dressed up as a pro-government demonstration, all in grey clothes. You know, it's one of these sort of humorous aspects of the Hungarian political scene. But the reason, of course, it's a kind of what we call in Hungarian a gumicsont, a rubber bone thrown to a dog. Actually, the reason that the Fidesz government has introduced this legislation, I think, as a long-term and cynical observer of Hungary, is that it's trying to force the challenger to Mr. Orbán, a man called Péter Magyar, who's a conservative coming from the Fidesz ranks, but who, astonishingly, because of his campaign on social media, he's quite likely to win next year's election. But his appeal in the Hungarian countryside is as a conservative politician. And so Fidesz have basically pushing through this law in order to try and force the leading conservative opposition figure to take the side of the LGBT people, which would then undermine his support in the Hungarian countryside. And Péter Magyar, to his credit, is refusing to say a single word, even though his party, the Tisza party, is leading in the polls. He cannot touch the LGBT issue because he'll be seen as a liberal and will lose his voters. He cannot touch the Ukrainian issue, so he doesn't. He ignores both issues, which might be wicked and terrible in a democratic sense, but in the terms of real power politics, they cannot trick him into talking about those two issues. And despite the government majority in the media, and they're fuming about it, they can't get him to talk about it. So for me, it's a proof of the resilience of the media, in summary, of the independent media in Hungary, that we have a situation in Hungary where Mr. Orbán, despite his strength in the country, in the economy, in the media, he might well lose next year. And one other image I wanted to leave you with, to move off from Hungary. There's, and this is really just in response to some of the discussion this morning and the discussions we've been having over lunch. There's a book by Isaiah Berlin called The Hedgehog and the Fox, about Tolstoy's theory of history. And he's actually quoting the ancient Greek poet Archilochos. A fox knows many things, but a hedgehog knows one big thing. Right? A fox knows many things, but a hedgehog knows one big thing. As we talk now about the influence of Putin, of Trump, of Xi, and as we as journalists ponder how to function in this environment of powerful men, powerful leaders, I think it's a useful image to remember that we journalists are foxes, and we seek information from many sources. And this brings me full circle back to what you said, Wojciech, at the very beginning, that about local media. Where are the local stories? Where does the fox operate? While the hedgehog is operating in Washington, in Moscow, or wherever, we journalists working on local stories, not necessarily the political stories, this is our strength. And by working locally, talking to real people locally, and not getting tied up on the agendas of the hedgehogs with their one big issues, not obviously we have to deal with politics, but I think we can keep plugging away. And that's another of the reasons I think that the Hungarian independent media is so resilient and remains so strong, despite the strong cold winds against it.
Thank you very much, Nick. I always wondered what the big thing the hedgehog believed in. It must have been pretty good. The last word from the panel to Adam.
To me,
Yeah. Think of another question.
well, maybe just an observation. It just occurred to me during the panel when we discussed Romania and also Austria, that it seems to me that there's a certain pattern here, that whenever there is a grand coalition between left and center right, center left and center right, like in Germany, in Austria, and in Romania for that matter, for so many years, then in a sense it's inevitable that the third force is going to gain traction. And we see this in Germany, you know, we just have a new government formed in record time for Germany, but we see CDU falling behind the AfD in opinion polls, because neither party, neither the SPD nor CDU, are seen as delivering on their election promises, because obviously they had to compromise because they come from the opposite spectrum. So voters of those parties are disappointed because they don't feel fully represented by their parties, whereas AfD is promising to break the system and offer something else. Whether that's credible is a secondary matter. I'll tell you an anecdote. As Wojciech mentioned, there's a presidential campaign in Poland. We have the frontrunner, who is the center-right mainstream party. Then we have Law and Justice, the conservative, Eurosceptic candidate, who is behind more or less 8 percentage points. And then there is the far-right candidate, who is the dark horse of the race. And then we have the 15 or whatever other candidates trailing behind. And I was, the other day, I was at my local supermarket, and there were two shop assistants talking politics in the next, exactly, thank you. And I just, you know, I had no choice. I overheard what they were saying. So, how are you going to vote? Well, I don't know. I think Mencen is an interesting guy. This is the number 3 guy, the far-right Confederacja guy. And the other guy said, well, why would you vote for him? And says, well, you know, these other guys, they've been around so long, so maybe something new, just for the heck of it. And this other guy was trying like, no, but he's awful. He says, yeah, you're right, he's awful. So maybe I'll vote for one of these, you know, sort of tail candidates in the end. So, you know, I think we sometimes underestimate the disillusionment with the mainstream in the first place, and how some of these decisions by voters do not necessarily have to be really well thought out. It's not about policies. This is a protest vote. And if I may, I'll go towards the optimistic vein that Nick introduced. Mr. Georgescu reminds me of a candidate we had in Poland in 1990. Mr. Tymiński, a man from nowhere, a mysterious businessman from Canada, who entered the presidential election that year. This was the first free election in Poland after the fall of communism. We had Lech Wałęsa, I don't need to explain, and we had Tadeusz Mazowiecki, another prominent Solidarity figure. There was an ex-communist in the running as well. And suddenly, out of nowhere, in the first round, Mr. Tymiński, the man from nowhere, spiritualist, just like Mr. Georgescu, talking about dark magic and stars aligning to help him win, and, you know, conspiracy theories, you know, the same blueprint. And he came second. He came second. And in the second round, there were 2 weeks before the second round, it seemed for a moment that he could win. A man from nowhere. This was before the internet. This was before the social media, before TikTok.
Thank you, Adam. Before we go out, I just did a very quick look around to see what the various media organizations were thinking about what was happening in the media in Central and Eastern Europe. And by and large, it's pessimistic, unlike Nick. It's pessimistic in the sense that most of them are saying things are getting worse. The one exception is Poland, where it's generally seen that the victory of Tusk has meant that the media there are, certainly relative to the previous PIS government, much more independent, much more able to ask difficult questions, including of the government, the Tusk government, and much less biased in issues, for example, like LGBTQ. So that's Poland, but nearly everywhere else, in Czech Republic, even though people were frightened that Mr. Babiš would become the prime minister and make a real change to the right. He didn't. But they fear, apparently, that what's happening in Slovakia with the new right-wing government under Fico might spread to the rest of the Czech Republic. I'm not sure that's true, but it may be. I don't know. In Serbia, things are certainly getting worse, and the protests there in Serbia, where the government is clamping down quite violently at times on the protesters, highlights the fact that the media there are not at all independent, or at least most of them. Romania, we've talked about. As I said earlier, the Reporters Without Borders regard the media in this country as under increasing pressure. Excessive politicization, that's what I said before, corrupt funding, subjection of editorial decision-making, and deliberate disinformation. We'll talk about disinformation tomorrow. And the testimony of many of you here, Ovidiu and others, has been that that's justified, that things are bad, and actually have been bad for some time. He put it right back to the end of Ceausescu, and the period after that as being one which clearly was a bit better than Ceausescu, but nevertheless didn't mean that the media was independent and serving the public interest. In Hungary, we've also heard, though the question, I guess, really, Nick, is it's the Adam Jassa question from before. Why is he re-elected all the time? What makes him so popular? If he is so nasty, why is he always the prime minister? Many people say it's because the left or the liberals or the the opposition is itself rather hopeless. Doesn't come together, constantly fighting. The last left government was terrible in the economy. All of these things. Nevertheless, Orban has been prime minister for some time. You would expect a reasonable opposition to find his weaknesses and to profit from them, but so far it doesn't seem to have done. Moldova, we've heard of. The picture, really the overall picture, especially from people like Reporters Without Borders and so on, is of a series of countries in which, again, Poland accepted so far, is not great. It tends to have gone backwards rather than forwards, or at least it's static and on the defensive. And it'd be good to pick up on that in our coming conversation as to why that's happened. Why is it that countries which were at the end of the Soviet Union were heralded as coming to freedom, coming to a new public and indeed private society, which didn't have to be subject to an all-powerful ideology and an all-powerful communist party. Are we exaggerating the fact? Is it just takes more time than it was thought initially in the euphoria of the end of communism, or is there something deeper to it than that? And in order to understand what's happening in the Eastern and Central European countries, I think it's a good place to start to talk about what's happened to the media. Anyway, the discussion is now open. Please come back perhaps you might want to ask a question of a particular member of the panel, or pick up on a thread that has been teased out already. Over to you. Mark.
Sorry, just I had one question, and I just wanted to make one comment. And so, just talking about what John was mentioning now, I've wondered sometimes. I'm remembering in the 1990s when I was covering this part of the world, the state of the media organizations that we worked for at that time. They had I worked for The Independent, which was a brand new, quite small newspaper, but we had dozens of foreign correspondents around the world. And we had people here, we had people, in different countries in Eastern Europe. And, then you get to the big newspapers, and these media organizations had lots of resources. And I wonder sometimes, whether part of what's happened is simply that it isn't, if you imagine a different reality in which the business model for, news had not broken, here too you'd have a much stronger media, and the real problem is that we rely on heroic efforts by certain people to do stuff that is very difficult to do, and that's what we're kind of pinning all our hopes on, and I don't know how to fix that other than to sort of say, are there ways that we need to find different ways of funding things, different models that we need to find, adopt models that are being, like podcasting and so on, and somehow find a way to curate and create sort of a kind of regulation at a state level and a curation at an editorial level that exists for mainstream media, and see if there's ways to recreate. And so that's just a comment. And then just I had a question in Moldova, which is, I come to cover Moldova sometimes, and I recognize exactly what you're saying. And I just wonder, I always come away thinking, I don't know what's the solution? You're absolutely right about Russian language TV, but you know, that it isn't just that the Russian channels have money, it's also that they have access to this high quality, you know, massive budget entertainment that, you know, Moldovan TV can never hope to have because it just doesn't have the market. So, you know, what do you think the solution ought to be? You know, the government's had a go by banning state TV and so on, but that doesn't seem to work. So I'm just curious.
Somebody from Moldova should answer that.
Yeah, I will try. Maybe Irina also. I don't know actually what will be the solution and what would be the good solution, but we have some good signs. For a long time in Moldova, on the end of the year, it was a tradition. People watched Russian TV channels for a show, for New Year's show, yes. Голубой огонек. It's blue fire like this. But in the last 4 years, people started to watch Moldavian independent TV channels for local entertainment but good quality shows. So people want to watch something local. They want to have local heroes. They want to watch something about themselves. And we should to provide this. I think the biggest mistake that we did in not only maybe journalists from Moldova, but all journalists, is that we stopped to listen people and we listen more and more politicians. And people don't like politicians. So we are in the moment when people think that media, it's not about them. Media, it's about the government, it's about politicians, it's about these bad guys that do our life not better than they expect. So maybe a solution will be to have more qualitative content and more content about simple people and their problems. So we should to change something in our activity, but it needs a lot of money, and that because I started my discussion and presentation about the financial independence, because media market, TV media market in Moldova, I mean advertising market, it's around 7 million euros. And we have 20 TV channels that fight for this 7 million euros. Public TV channel in Moldova has an annual budget around 9 million euros. So only one TV channel, public TV channel, have a budget bigger than all budget of advertising market in Moldova. And the budget of advertising market in Romania in 2024 was around 400 million euros. So it's quite difficult because we depend a lot on the support of donors. But even those, yeah.
Why are there so many channels? Why don't they consolidate?
Because most of them,
Competition is the Russian language.
yeah.
And having, you said it yourself at the beginning.
Yeah.
You compete among
Absolutely.
each other instead of competing with Russia. So you should perhaps consolidate.
I could not give you an answer. I don't know why, because all of us think that they should to remain. Not me. So if to close a TV channel, not me. I should to remain. It's complicated. But independent media is divided. So we have a really good consolidation of Russian propaganda and media. And they attack us a lot. We don't discuss about the pressure that we feel independent media in Moldova. Last 4 years, Russian propaganda, actually they understand who should to be under attack. And they targeted few independent journalists and few independent media outlets in Moldova. In the last 4 years, they attacked a lot this. They actually organized large campaign of discreditation of this media institution and journalists. I am one of the journalists under this who is targeted of this attack. So we have in Moldova 4 or 5 very popular Telegram channels dedicated to me. They daily wrote about how stupid I am, how corrupted I am a prostitute, and different other things. I under attack of pro-Russian politicians. They have conferences on they attack me because they understand that I am co-founder of two independent TV channels, and our voices are very important. But even those, Russian propaganda is very aggressive and very strong in the Republic of Moldova. But in the last 15 years, pro-Russian politicians or parties didn't win elections. This means people trust us. They watch this entertainment content. Of course, they are affected of this propaganda. But when we have elections in Moldova, all country watch two TV channels actually in Moldova. Is TV8 one of our TV channel, and also another TV channels, Journal TV. So people understand where they are informed, objecting, and where now.
I can have a short remark. Sorry. Yeah, I think one of the solution can be entertainment from Romania, and one of the from ratings and audiences, I saw that the TV shows from Romania, like Voice of Romania or Romanian Got Talent and so on, and they are very watched in Moldova. There are a lot of contendants coming from Moldova at these TV shows. So one solution could be replacing this disinfotainment of Russia. Is to fill it up with Romanian entertainment, which does not have any political I don't know, meddling or something like that. It's just entertainment, pure entertainment, and that's it. So this could be one of the solution. I think the televisions in Moldova cannot gather all together, to form a option for Russian TVs. There are a lot of interest, political, economic, also some personal grudge between the owners of this TV station. So I don't think it can gather all together. And also wanted to follow up on what Mariana said a little bit earlier about how the media is very targeted right now by the Russian propaganda, and there is a good political reason for that. In October 20, we had a referendum, not just presidential elections in Moldova. And actually, the one who were the head coaches in the story were the media and the civil society, who went village by village and explained to people what the EU is and who is funding their development and so on. And the people understood. But the politician from the governing party, the PAS, Action and Solidarity Party, didn't campaign too much. Actually, the referendum was won by media and so civil society, and the Russians saw that, and we are targeting even more. Like Mariana said before, she is one of the stars on Telegram with all this kind of bad labels. I am also one of them. My friends are telling me, you are on Telegram. They said this and that about you, but I'm very amused by this attitude. I think as more we are disturbing their work, we are doing a great job with journalism there in Moldova. So I think we are on the right path, even if we are damned every day on Telegram and so on. And regarding this advertising market, yes, it's very small in Moldova, only 7 million euros. There's a big competition on this money. Of course, Russia has a lot of resources when it comes to television, when it comes to online. And as I said earlier, there is a big debate in Moldova whether they will ban the online media or the social media like TikTok or Telegram, or leave it that way, and they might lose this election because there is another informational space on social media which differs from the classic one. So I think also what will be happening after the Romanian election will influence a lot the vote in Moldova for the fall. And also the second factor is that Moldovans also want to see how the negotiation in Ukraine goes. So these are main, in my subjective personal opinion. One is the presidential elections in Romania, the outcome of the presidential election in Romania, and the second are the negotiation in Ukraine. So I think it will be in the fall, the external politics will play a big role in their vote because they are squeezed between Romania and Ukraine, and it's very important for them to know how they will position themselves.
Unless there are questions, there are, I think, questions. Yeah, and then I can ask.
No, hang on, we want to leave it at the back.
I'm here. Thank you very much for this event. First of all, my name is Mariana Presizhnyuk. I'm correspondent from Ukraine in Romania and the Republic of Moldova. And my question, first of all, is going to my Moldovan colleagues. Thank you for your insights. And I'm very worried about point what you have been saying regarding entertainment content, because practically it's very important research that proves that entertainment content, it was done in the early 2000, it reduced actually interest of audience toward the danger and toward real threats. How it is appropriate, in your opinion, to have your audience in relaxed effects of entertainment? And maybe I would be interested in the opinion of colleagues from other countries. Thank you. By the way, I have the same critics toward our authorities from Ukraine as well. Thank you.
That she asked.
Was the question to what extent infotainment is switching people off from the understanding of the real danger of what's going on?
Effect from entertainment content. How much do you see it's appropriate in this condition that we have war in Ukraine and very destabilized geopolitical situation? What extent, where is the line of your entertainment focus of content to have your audience in this relaxed state?
I don't watch too much Russian content, so I can give you
you said a lot about infotainment.
Disinfotainment.
Disinfotainment.
Yes,
infotainment.
by the Russians.
Can you say about your approach in this information politics of your channels, and how much it is appropriate in that condition you live in? That is the question.
Yeah, but we are doing a lot of debunking, to say so, at TVR Moldova. Of course, we are Romanian state television. This is our mission also to debunk fake news and to explain. I also do it in my shows, but we have also dedicated TV shows about it, like Fake News Alert, which is a TV program dedicated to debunking Russian propaganda. And I don't know how effective is it. I cannot measure it, but I think in this regard, Mariana, Ukraine is doing a great job. And as far as I know, there will be a meeting between the Romanian, Moldovan, and Ukrainian official to talk about a common strategy to tackle this issue. It will be in a few months. I think it will be next month, if I'm not mistaken. So I think the countries are doing a lot of effort in this regard. I don't know how it will be implemented, but for sure, the Ukrainian experience in this regard will help also Moldova and also Romania. In my personal belief, this kind of initiative comes a little bit too late. I think it should have been done few years ago, and but anyway, in my belief, it will be a very good initiative to work together, debunking, because as you know, you are working on this kind of topics. The Russian propaganda narratives are the same in the big lines, but they differ only. They targeted differently the countries on the local specific. So I think if we will be using Ukraine experience in this regard, both Moldova and Romania will be much more gained from this issue.
There's another question. But before there's another question, I
Please,
will try to relate.
We'll come to you in a minute.
And I don't know if I get what you wanted to convey, but I'll try to phrase my thoughts related to your question, in a sense that I agree that we cannot do infotainment Russia style because the objective of the Russian infotainment is very much about switching off the attention of the people from the key political topics. And the as I mentioned, the key duty of there is curiosity, but there is a political or public mission of news, of journalism. I would put it. Okay, so nonetheless, one thing I wanted to say is that we are often portraying the communication by colleagues from Russia as propaganda, but I would like to say three things, and one is the reflection on this point. Democracy is an ideology. It is an ideological project. In the given circumstances, we have to be aware we're doing propaganda. Propaganda is conveying certain set of values and beliefs that we might have been taking for granted, especially in the last 30 years, under the so-called peace dividend, and we haven't been remembering that it is a tool to formulate and uphold the values that hold us together as an alliance, growing alliance, powerful alliance, but it's not powerful if the will of the people is eroded. And the will of the people is eroded, case in point, also by switching them off through infotainment or switching them off from the important topics. Can we do it differently? I don't know. And that's my second point from the conversation we are having so far, is that indeed we have seen in the past 30 years that grand coalitions have been, the populism could have been interpreted as a byproduct of grand coalitions. That it's empirical. It's a fact. At the same time, that we should ask ourselves the question why populism was not so strong in the previous decades under the Cold War, when grand coalitions were a normal daily. There was essentially what we call mainstream was a grand coalition, either formal or informal, of the parties that would unite on the key question, and to the extent they would paralyze the sentiments that probably were always there, that surge as populism. One of the answers can very well be, and there is a brilliant book about it by Paul Trubowitz and Philip Laboon, Geopolitics and Democracy, is that there was globalization, of course, but this globalization was limited to partnerships based on also on the strategic alliances. And in a way, once we said the world is open for everything, it also took off the cage of populism within our democracies. What they're saying is that most of the far right and far left is anti-globalist in their sentiments, and they're turning to very similar tactics globally and resurging because they see an opportunity in that there is no moral compass, or no longer this kind of propaganda, if you want, that upholds democracy, because everything else is being also considered democracy. And my third point is we're in serious problem about our social contract, because all of that boils down to our defense posture and ability to defend ourselves, because the infotainment of Russia is an advanced weaponry system that erodes public opinion, so that potential support for defense is not there, and you can move in with, you can change geographies. But I think the big problem that we need to start at is what is our social contract, and is our social contract credible enough? Because the social contract of, again, the previous age, before 30 years ago, was that there is a welfare state and intergenerational solidarity. So the young generation knows that they might be called in to the duty and serve the people, but their children will pay up, you know, and then pensions will be there. I don't think we are living now in the reality that this system is upholding. And the problem with populism, at least in the Polish case, and the far, you call them far right, I would call them even extreme right, because I think the other candidate is far right, but it's a definition problem. But what this third guy is essentially alluding to, and he's the most popular in Poland among the youngest cohort. He's got 55% of support for the cohort of 18 to 29, and he's got 44%, which is still the dominant position of all the other candidates in the cohort between 30 and 39, is that they say, we don't like and don't accept the social contract in which we need to pay up taxes and do things that we don't like, and we will never get the same as our parents and grandparents have been receiving from the social contract based on welfare state. And that is the dangerous moment, because that essentially, again, on the basic level, erodes our defense posture in the long run.
Thank you much. It's a remarkable intervention which addresses a lot of the issues that come up. You were coming?
In Republic of Moldova, the pro-Russian politicians, they have already started to talk about the law of foreign agents. And I want to ask Mariana and Madeleine to tell us a little about how realistic is that this kind of law will be voted in Moldova, and how this will affect the independent media.
We'll take another question before coming back to it. In the back.
This is more of a remark than. Asha? So this is more of a remark than a question about why the far right is winning more in Central and Eastern Europe, as we can see with the AfD in Germany. If we look at the 2025 statistics, we can almost see an outline of Eastern Germany. And that is because of three things. First of all, when people feel in crisis, they will tend to vote for an extreme party. Second of all, people will choose the extreme that they haven't chosen before. With Eastern Germany being part of the communist bloc, more people are inclined to look for almost fascist solutions. And also in Germany, it might be because of CDU being seen as responsible for mass immigration with Angela Merkel, and the AfD being seen as the alternative for Germany. I forgot what I wanted to say.
Okay, thanks.
We have one more here.
Okay, one more, and then go back to answer the question about Moldova.
Just going on to Moldova, I've had a chance to go there many times. Remember the first time I asked people, I arrived on Language Day, and I said, do you feel more Russian or do you feel more Romanian as your language? And no one wanted to answer the question. It was the oddest thing I've ever seen. I was there a couple weeks ago as well, and I had a feeling that many of the Moldovans have somehow come to accept the possibility that Moldova will come under Russian influence. We don't know which way the war goes, but is there a sense, and here's my question, is there a sense, a kind of fatalistic sense, that, well, we'll once again have to be under Russian influence? Do people accept that, or do they fight it?
Anybody else want to come in on the Moldovan question before we go to the Moldovan answers? Yes.
I just have a very small clarificatory question, because what you were saying about the Moldovan media was really interesting. But one, you said that entertainment from Romania could be part of the solution. So I wanted to understand, why is it not already, given that Romanian entertainment is already popular? So just wanted to understand that. And also you said that the outcome of the Romanian election is going to be very influential in Moldova. Could you unpack that just a little bit and say what you think the impact is going to be? Thank you.
I'm the unpacker, and thank you for the question. Indeed, it needs some details. When it comes to the Romanian entertainment, as far as I can see, it is very popular in Moldova, and it could replace the Russian entertainment. Everybody's watching. I see it on social media. All my friends are commenting on this shows, and everybody, especially when a Moldovan gets a prize or something like that, or it's chosen to be in the next stage or something like that, there is a big enthusiast on social media. I noticed that with all of my friends, and I think it's like a general feeling in Moldova. And you wanted me to detail on the election. Yeah, let's take a hypothetical scenario. Let's say George Simeon will win. In my belief, this will influence the vote in Moldova to be more like maybe for another party or a unionist party. There are some preparedness in Moldova to form such a party. There is a small coalition of 3 parties, and there is another party, a fourth one, and if George Simeon will win, I think this kind of coalition will gain traction in the parliamentary election. And if Nicușor Dan, let's say, will win the elections in Romania, I think the vote will be more for pro-European forces, for PAS. And I think this is how the vote in Romania will influence the parliamentary vote in Moldova. But it will be a vote of fear, in my belief. And also, I said about the outcome in negotiation in Ukraine, and I think it will also be a vote in fear, because if the Russians will let's say win after these negotiations somehow in any form, I think there will be a vote for a bigger vote for pro-Russian parties. So this is how it will be influenced in my belief. Yeah. Okay. I hope it answered your question at least partially.
Maybe negotiation related to the war will influence more elections in Moldova than a presidential election. I think so, yeah. And about the entertainment, from Romanian entertainment, we have a good, if I could say, a good case, ProTV in Moldova, and they rebroadcast some very popular entertainment shows. They are very popular in Moldova, these entertainment shows, because a lot of Moldovan citizens also participate in these shows. But ProTV has high audiences only in the period of time when they have in the season of these entertainment shows. And when entertainment shows finished, their audiences decreased a lot. So I try to. So I am pro-Romania, and I'm actually an unionist, if you understand me. And I don't like so much Russian language content in Moldova, because I understand it's like a circle. We give them Russian content and they will remain in this Russian bubble. And we should to do something, but we should to do step by step, because it's not possible in one day to change the habits of consuming of these people. Romanian, we tried to test Romanian language content and Romanian content from Romania, but it's not so popular. I explained in 6 months. We had unknown TV channels in the top 10 with the biggest audiences in the country. Russian language content actually work totally successfully in Moldova, and we are not sure that Romanian language also. Also about series, people like to watch series. We test English very good series, translated, dubbed in Romanian language, and nobody watch. And the same series, dubbed in Russian, has huge audiences.
So Russian is the language
I'm consuming, yeah. And about the law that Socialist Party and pro-Russian parties promise if they will be in the power, they will adopt. Of course, it will influence a lot media landscape of Moldova, because I said that a lot of media, good quality media in Moldova, depend 100% of grants. We don't have business models applied in media in Moldova, and it's difficult. I explain why, because advertising market is so small that it's really difficult to survive only with the budget from advertising market. But what I know is in difficult period of time, people need true informations. That because I hope that independent media will invite it something to survive.
Thanks. What, you wanted to come back again?
Yeah, if I may. I think there were very relevant questions in the back, to which I have to answer immediately, because, excuse me, I don't remember the name of the person who asked it, but are people in Eastern Germany in crisis? That was one of the assumptions, and I would strongly say they were not. It's heavily and well subsidized, and good life. Perhaps they were underrepresented in the top elites in the country overall, because of the nature of transformation, among others. But they are not in crisis, Eastern Germany, and I'm not so sure also about the question about the post-communist being more prone to fascist or neo-Nazi. That's hardly, in my opinion, true to attribute it to this particular geography or historical experience. And the migration question seems also not to be one-party issue. Well, I do believe the mistakes were there on behalf of Angela Merkel about that. She actually turned around and did a U-turn. That's a question that is prevailing in many others and not necessarily always producing the same results. And if I am allowed just one sentence.
You're allowed.
Just think, because I'm somehow struggling to understand what's the issue between Russian and Romanian in broadcasting in Moldova. And I'm thinking that you have how many million Russian speakers in the Transnistria who are citizens of Moldova? No, hundreds, 300,000. Are there citizens of Moldova? Do they speak Romanian? These are points of information. I don't know, but I'm thinking that there were cases in which countries, first of all, took different strategies. Latvia, Estonia, they took different strategies towards Russian-speaking minorities, and minorities that would also receive pensions from the Soviet times. Basically, you would assume they would be prone to join or rejoin the Russian project again. But when surveyed, they were not. They were saying they would never take a Russian passport and resign from the benefits of for Moldova prospectus EU integration, for the Baltic states, the ongoing integration, European integration. But even another case, Belarus. I've been closely observing the investments into how they've been trying to propagate, and I'm deliberately using propagate here, message of democratic free Belarus in Belarusian. And then they realized the customer is demanding Russian language. And so they switched, and this was before 2020, when they have been building up civil society resilience to the extent that was not enough eventually, but it has been utilizing the Russian language as the medium to communicate, rather than, and I'm not saying abandon Romanian, or no, but why don't you actually communicate in Russian? That's my question.
I think I will answer your question. I think regarding the Romanian language in Romania, that is not a today issue, because it was solved like 2 years ago in the parliament when the Romanian language was enshrined in the constitution. It was a problem in the 90s, but indeed, I agree that in Moldova we have a polarized society, a very big cleavage between the pro-Europeans and the Russian, and the sides are almost equal, 50-50. So I cannot give you a straight answer if the language issue will bounce in a way or another. So it's like an open game, still an open game. Although judiciary, I told you, Romanian language is already in the constitution, so we don't have an issue there. And regarding the law of the foreign agents, I think it's a follow-up on USAID scandal. I think the pro-Russian parties want to continue this debate on how US funds were evil for Moldova, and of course it was given to some political parties, the pro-European parties, and the civil society and the media, which are bad because they are pro-European and they have to register themselves as a foreign agent. And I think they are preparing somehow the terrain also after the parliamentary election, if the pro-Russian will win, to have already this draft of law prepared, just to be quickly introduced and voted. So I think there are two factors when it comes to this law. Apparently right now it doesn't have any effect, but we'll see how it will work in the future.
Nick, sorry. Then a video.
Sorry to mention Hungary again, but I'm not trying to undermine the Moldovan strand of the discussion. But yeah, exactly. But John did ask a question long ago. But so why do they keep electing Viktor Orban? And the simple reason is, you might find this funny, is that his supporters can sing, and they love to sing. And the opposition parties have neglected the national anthem. They've neglected song altogether. If you go to a Fidesz rally in Hungary, at the end of the rally, there will be the national anthem, and everyone will sing. There's no need to bring piped music, to play music. The crowd sings, and it sounds fantastic. It sounds like a rugby match in Wales or a soccer match. Wherever people singing the national anthem until now. And the great secret of Peter Magyar and the Tisza Party's success is that he can sing. I wrote a profile of him for The Economist last year once, and this was the headline really, the man that can sing his way to power, because his supporters, all his rallies, people sing, they're not playing the piped national anthem, and this is because they have a proud sense of geographical place. Perhaps we can relate this to the question about East Germany. Why are people in Eastern Germany voting for the AfD? In my experience, and I speak German and I used to live in West Germany, I went to university and school in West Germany, and there people were very dubious about their German identity because of the history of Germany in the Second World War. And Germans, in my experience, young Germans, in my experience, from Western Germany, love to be Europeans rather than Germans. In Eastern Germany, I think they're still trying to be German. And in all that, I wonder what they're singing in Moldova. Just to bring it back to Moldova. When I went to Georgescu rallies recently at the end of last year, fantastic sea of Romanian tricolour flags, everyone singing proudly and so on. So and what else would one do in a globalized, or in many people's view, over-globalized world, but look for their own identity? So that's just to throw that back into the pot.
No, it's a very good point on the singing, and it's true that the Welsh in the UK do sing a lot, both hymns and patriotic songs, and especially at rugby matches. But the singing doesn't help because their rugby is rubbish at the moment. So perhaps the wrong songs.
Just a quick question for you guys. I've been in Chisinau, I don't know, many times. And I've seen your country, growing from a more or less failed state, which was, I think, the biggest failure, if correct me if I'm wrong, was during Plahotniuc's. I think it was the lowest. In the modern days, I'm not talking about the early 90s or something. It was, but you have, you came back, and to my understanding, I think your institutions work better than ours. Could you maybe explain this for all of us that we don't necessarily watch, and we could not, I don't know, map, this road that your country has taken. So this is my question.
Now let me start. Even if Moldova is her country, I'm just adopted. Yeah, I'm working already for 10 years. Yes, indeed, there is a big change in Moldova regarding the state of law, and the institutions are reformed. Of course, the process is not as fast as we all wanted. In Moldova, there is this habit of everything should happen overnight. The patience is not a virtue in Moldova, unfortunately. But yes, indeed, there are some spectacular changes. If we are comparing it to Plahotniuc's era, this means 2015, 2019, when he fled the country, and we don't know yet where he is right now. But he is meddling, of course, in this parliamentary election. He has his own reasons. But coming back to how Moldova changed over the years, I think it was a combination of political will, because the Action and Solidarity Party has a lot of sins, but when it comes to European integration, I think in comparison to the other so-called pro-Europeans, they actually did things. And of course, there is a big opportunity for Moldova right now. There is a window of opportunity when it comes to joining the EU. Also related to the war in Ukraine, we have to be very honest on this issue, because I remember when PAS came to power, they promised that will apply, they will for joining EU at the end of their mandate, meaning 2025, and actually it was in 2022. Yes. Yeah, they were forced. They are trying to get as much as they can take from this process. They are doing a lot of reforms. Of course, the old system is fighting back, especially in the judiciary system. You know how it is. But things are going, in my opinion, okay. Also in the judiciary sector, it will be, this process of vetting. They are going to this extraordinary evaluation of all the magistrate, like in Albania, and the process is kind of slowed down by all this kind of interference and so on. There is a big debate that always the judiciary reform is very attacked by the enemy of this reform, and this is the key reform that Moldova has to do. In other sectors, I think the things are moving pretty good. I think Moldova is on the right track. I think 2030 normally will be a target to be obtained. In my belief, I heard the Prime Minister yesterday, he was giving an interview for CaleaEuropeană.ro, and he said 2028. I think it's a little bit too optimistic to say so, but anyway, I understand the political reason, and he's doing also he's also campaigning right now. But yes, Moldova is on the right track. Also, you can see that on the figures, the GDP of the state, the infrastructure is changing, and slowly the mentality is changing into a pro-European one, a genuine one. And I think Moldova is on the right track, but it has to go. I remember the words of, I think it was Bill Clinton when it came to Romania in 1999, if I remember correctly, 97. And he said something, you are on the right track, stay on the track, the future is yours, or something like that. Yeah, I think Moldova is on the right track, and if it continues on this road, I think it will go to it will achieve this target of joining the EU by 2030, in my belief.
I wanted to just point out, one of the things that people have said was that that the LGBTQ protests and so on in existence are regarded as unpopular, or seen to be unpopular, or indeed decreed as unpopular, as Nick was saying about Hungary. And in Western Europe and in America and elsewhere, people say of the East and Central Europeans that they're backward in this, that they're biased and so on. We forget that until quite recently, in the last perhaps several decades, that the LGBTQ, not then, say, 30, 40 years ago, described as such, was itself unpopular. In my youth, some time ago now, it was not regarded as being particularly shameful to use words about gay people, especially gay men, not so much gay women, gay men, which were insults, essentially. And nobody would really, some people would say, look, that's nasty or something, but by and large it was accepted, especially among men, especially talking together in pubs and so on. What happened, and I haven't got into the history of it, but what seemed to happen, or what partly happened, was that the liberal part of society became more powerful, and the governments, the state, took up the LGBTQ, at least in part, the LGBTQ ideas and their protests against prejudice, and made it part of what it was to be a full citizen. A full citizen did not treat lesbian, gays, so on badly, and if you did, then you made yourself into a figure either of fun or of dislike, and that spread, not uniformly. I mean, it was faster in some countries, slower in others. But by and large, it spread and became, if you like, to use Wojciech's vocabulary, it became an ideology. People learned, in other words, that in order to despise, despising people, LGBTQ people, was a bad thing to do. It was immoral. My impression is that that hasn't happened much at that level, among the liberal or governmental level in East Central Europe. But others will know better. Actually, it'd be interesting to know how far, for example, the far-right party in Austria takes up that view. In other words, sees itself and promotes itself as against LGBTQ, unlike the other parties in Austria.
What's interesting is that you go back to the 90s and 2000s, the far right was not the principal party that was opposed to LGBTQ rights. Historically, it's been the center-right People's Party, which is the party of sort of Catholic conservatism, that has been the consistent obstacle to progress on LGBT rights. One reason actually for that is because Jörg Haider, who was the leader of the far right in the 90s and 2000s, was himself, maybe he was bisexual. He certainly was always surrounded by a lot of attractive young men, but so it wasn't in the interest of the Freedom Party to go after this particular issue. For whatever reason, today, Herbert Kickl, who is the leader of the Freedom Party, he's not a particularly religious person. He's more of a self-styled philosopher of some kind. But for him, for whatever reason, this picture of mother, father, child is central to his conception of society. And so this is also why he's really promoting
values.
yeah, well, it's actually it's in the kind of Orban vein, I would probably say. So it's this is why he's against gender ideology and trans rights and so on, because these things represent, or even the Freedom Party are opposed, not into sort of linguistic concepts, but against gender inclusive forms of the German language, which is a very gendered language, as you know, because these represent threats to this model. So that's a change, I would say, in the past even 5 years, that there is this ever sort of, not in the sense that they're going to go around beating people up on the streets or something, but just the sort of that being opposed to LGBTQ rights, in particular the Tea Party, has become ever more central to far-right ideology in Austria.
Is that true elsewhere? Is it true here, for example, in Romania? Would a liberal politician tend to avoid saying one thing or the other? Yeah, over there.
Battery.
Yeah, that's it.
So I'm from Arad, which is the second county in Romania, which at the parliamentary elections got the highest votes for out. So I think the main reason in our city is exactly about this hate towards everything that has to do with Western values. And in Arad city, I'm not talking about the whole county, but in Arad city, there always been a very, very important accent towards the religious aspect in campaigning. You said about the liberals in Arad, over 30 years, 20 years, there's a liberal party, which oddly always talks about traditional values. Our mayor, we had, Palka, which is a Europarliamentary now, 16 years in office. All the time he went to these local churches in his campaigns to talk directly to the people only about religious values, traditional values, nothing about what, plans for the city or something, just to talk about how important God is and family values and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And now people are fed up with his party, PNL, because of the alliance that they made with PSD. So they felt betrayed, sorry. And I think it's kind of not a surprise that the second option in their mind was, okay, now we won't vote you. So they went to the other party with rhetoric about tradition and about how important religion is in our life.
If I may. Somebody else speaking or I?
No, you talk first. Somebody else is in the back.
Can I make another remark also on this topic? politicians that are considered the most liberal will touch the LGBTQ question even with the 10-foot pole. Now in the presidential elections, we have no candidate that has voted against we had a referendum for the family in 2019, I think, and the question was, does the family consist of mother and father, so woman and man? And all of the candidates that we now have for the presidency have voted that yes. So not even the most liberal candidates would say they support the LGBT community, because in Eastern Europe and especially in Romania, it would be considered political suicide. In the December elections, many people said they would never vote for Elena Lasconi because she comes from USR, and for them USR represents the LGBT community. So they said, we would never vote Elena Lasconi because she would bring all the gays in the country. Because that's what she commented on that in an interview. She said, yes, for sure, I have gay people just lined up in my house waiting for me to let them free once I become president.
Thank you. Lily up here.
LGBTQ, it's a very dividing subject in Romania, and I remember she was speaking about politicians who are running for presidency. Nicu Șordan, the person who is running for president with good chances, I think he quit USR, the party he founded, exactly because he refused to position himself on the subject of the family. He knew it's a very divisive subject, and he said, I promise to both parties I will not get involved in this, and he quit USR, so he didn't vote for. But what's more important to say, I think, it's that referendum was a fake issue in Romania. It wasn't necessary. I think it was Russian interference in Romanian society, because family was already defined in the constitution, and it wasn't a problem in Romanian society. We had problems with corruption, with justice, with lots of issues. People would make a common ground, or will find a common ground in. And this divided the society. And I think both parties made a mistake in Romanian society. People who supported LGBTQ community and rights, and it's normal to support human rights, of course, but they also made a mistake. They, in order to protect the gays' right, they attacked the traditional family. I heard a lot of influencers mocking the traditional family, saying, oh, you are criticizing gays' family, or the gays wish to have a family. But look at your traditional families. The women are coarse, the men are drinking, beating their women. What about your traditional family? The traditional family is a joke, it's a bad joke. And they made harm to the society at a certain level, because I was in the street conducting interviews with people who were pro-Georgescu. It's my job as a reporter, and I was among them. And one of the things they repeated most, besides the fact that they are against the old system, beside the fact that they were criticizing the corruption, beside the fact that they felt bullied, to quote Nictor, because the biggest part of the Romanian society felt bullied by the old class, by the old politician. Lots of them were unhappy with the fact that a traditional family was mocked in the society. And they said, we are going to vote with Călin Georgescu because he's talking about family, and look, you mocked the traditional family. We are voting with Călin Georgescu because he's speaking of God, and look, God is mocked in the contemporary society, so we'll vote for him. So if we, both parties said, but we are parties in the society, society is divided, and Russians contributed a lot to this. If we could find more moderation, if we could try to understand each other, the sensitive point, and not to push on the other sensitive point, not to fuel, we fueled the others' harms and wounds. So I think both parties should look inward and try to find common sense and not take challenge.
Just related to what you said, I think the last couple of years, particularly with this wave of far right, they remain in the sovereignty or isolation. I think LGBT has actually taken a step backward. There was a sort of growing acceptance, definitely in Romania, that if some people are gay, it's fine. Politicians were even thinking of legalizing same-sex unions, or at least civic partnerships. But with the rise of our parties and a general mood and disinformation, there's definitely been politicians are recoiling from it.
In other parties.
Yeah, across the board, as I think somebody said, even the more liberal politicians wouldn't go anywhere near it. They won't discuss the issues, even if privately they're okay. And it's true, the Liberal Party has, it's a centre-right party, it has two wings to it. It has this Arad wing, which the lady was talking about, which is very sort of aligned with American MAGA. And then it does have a European wing. What former President Iohannis was, he would have been fine with same-sex unions, but it was a political, very like hot potato. But it's gotten worse for, I think, LGBT rights in the last 18 months. Yeah, I think, and the general mood that goes with it, and the sort of divisiveness.
Thank you. Sorry, I just want to highlight a very important issue about the fear of the LGBTQ community is fueled inside churches and inside congregations in our city. And even we have, for example, one priest which goes in public hospitals, in saloons, and talks to the patients and tells them about this real menace to society that all the Western world represents by encouraging homosexuality and about adoptions, so we have real examples in the period of the elections that the people who went to neo-evangelistic communities, they were given heads up from the pastors that watch out, you should put the vote to Georgescu because he's the only one who will protect your family and your children of the homosexuals that will ruin and destroy Romania. So this is very serious. I think it's very, very bad when you go every Sunday, so that's every Sunday, every month, and you hear this from your preacher. And then how can you tell them that their preacher lies,
This is mainly the Romanian Orthodox Church, or all churches? Neo-evangelical, yeah.
I can make a comment here, if I may. I think in Arad, Gheorghe Falca is also influential because of his religious. Yes, he is a neo-Protestant, if I'm not mistaken, and his godfather is very influential as a neo-Protestant leader. And if you are taking it to a much larger level, I think it also aligns with what it comes from the U.S., from MAGA, and not only U.S. We are skipping Komov and Konstantin Malofeev from Russia. The oligarch of God was called by The Guardian, if I'm not mistaken. He is very influential in this kind of movement. So there is a link which goes upper to the highest floors.
And we arrived to the referendum again. Many priests, I know from inside, many priests recommended Călin Georgescu because they were really offended by the results of the referendum. And they are paying back now, and Călin Georgescu is their revenge for the referendum. It was not necessary and so very true.
Did you want to come back?
Yeah, I just wanted to another perspective, Latvia in 2023, a very conservative country otherwise. So 2023 and 2024. Well, they have some Catholic. They have it's conservative, but maybe not as religious overall. Have social conservative, yes, and culturally conservative too. Enacted same-sex marriages and essentially progressive agenda on how we, I think by now, together with John Lloyd, identified on the ideological grounds of democracy that there is an ideological commitment to a certain posture links to their sense of choosing their alliance. It's a form of increasing their security overall, to belong to a set of values that are generally embraced in Western democracies. And I think that is worth pointing out in the context of this, different also other motives and reasons. But I also wanted to say that I've been to Mayakovsky Museum in Moscow, and that left a deep impression on me. Mayakovsky, the propagandist who draw most of the propaganda of the early Bolshevik era, they were quite libertine until the party realized they're going to lose all the popularity if they pursue this common track of doesn't matter boy or girl, so, who you're sleeping or having fun with.
And so Stalin came in and put down the line. Yeah. Anybody else want to come in either on this or something else?
I wanted to say something about Serbia because you mentioned Serbia.
Yeah.
And I think we're witnessing, like you said, Vučić was cracking down on civil society in the media and all of that. But I think we're maybe witnessing something similar to what we're seeing in Hungary as well, which is a public awakening. And it's a political awakening. The Serbs were watching mostly infotainment. They switched off political news because they assumed nothing will ever change in Serbia. And suddenly, thanks to resilience, large segments of Serb society discovered politics. It has become a political society again. And that's why there is still so much traction. It's been going on for several months. There is no sign of letting go. These students and the farmers and the professions that are supporting it, they're not letting go.
No.
On that point, because I was in Belgrade last weekend, there are protests happening every day. The city is less functional because these protests are happening, public transport and so on and so on. And you're right that this is not just a student-led protest movement, this is a civil society protest. The question now, however, is can this civic movement be translated into politics? And that's the bigger question, because you raised this question in the very beginning, why does Viktor Orban keep winning? And I enjoyed your answer to this question, but he keeps winning because the system is rigged. He changed the constitution in such a way where it makes it easier, and he controls the media, etc., etc. And the fact is, in Serbia, the game is also rigged.
Absolutely.
And the opposition is disorganized. They could have won the elections in Belgrade last year, but they decided it was split on the question of boycott or not boycott and so on. So it remains to be seen if these students can do something in such a way to form a political vehicle that can run the election. And that can win, and whether they'll be, in a way, allowed to win. Because we saw all kinds of tactics used in the elections last year, busing in people from Bosnia and so on. So, on actually this note, I think we need to be more optimistic about these students.
Exactly.
It's something that I don't know that I have really seen in my lifetime.
Can they see? Oh yes, they can. And they're cycling to Brussels as well. They went to Hungary.
And they're marching across the country, and people are coming out to the streets and these grandmas who have nothing are giving them food.
And you have farmers, the more conservative part of Serb society, coming out with their tractors and support. This is a political movement already.
It is a major movement, clearly, and it hasn't got all that much. I may have missed things. It hasn't got all that much coverage in the media. At least not in the UK media or I think the American media. In any case, anybody else coming in? We've got in the program, we've got an hour in which to consider. What was that mutinous whisper?
A polite request if coffee break would be considered.
Certainly not. What do you think this is? Liberal? It's a coffee break. Coffee break time. If you want to come back, come back. Say something about what you have learned, and what you've liked and disliked in the conversation so far today, in the two sessions. What you've most struck you as being useful, what's most struck you as being right or mistaken. It's up to you to come back to us with what you now think. If you've changed your mind about things, if you've learned new things. I must say I've learned quite a good deal myself. One of the things I have learned is that most of you, certainly the ones who have spoken, and I would guess most of you, if not all of you, do regard journalism as a serious operation, as something which should be taken up seriously and with some responsibility. As was said before, journalism, whether for a private newspaper or a public radio or TV station, has got the responsibility, the assumption that it's going to tell you something which is right. That is, if it's news, if it's documentary, if it's something which is saying, here is what happened, and I've got the details and the proof that it happened in this way, and I'm going to tell you a story because the story is useful to you and to the society. If you're in, as we are, in that business, then we have quite a lot of responsibilities. So, while I had that in my mind before, for it to be restated, and restated quite powerfully by people, struck me as being extremely useful. As it were, a kind of a recommitment to something which, like in all jobs, you get fed up with it, you get tired of it, it annoys you, and so on. And so you need a kind of a refit. And I think that's happened here, certainly to me, and I hope to others as well. That it emphasizes that we're in this not just because it's an interesting occupation, which indeed it is, not just because it pays well, because it often doesn't, but because, like, say, doctors, we have a responsibility. A less bloody one usually, but certainly a responsibility. So it's up to you really to come back and say, I thought this was useful, I thought this was interesting, I thought that this might be good, but I didn't quite understand it, whatever you think. So, shall I start with the distinguished members of the panel?
I would just add to that, John, that again, on a sort of optimistic note, that there are so many opportunities of storytelling available to us now, that one of the best things about social media are the new options and the new ways open to us as storytellers. I've recently launched a Substack column of my own, and it's so weird, to be working for a big media like the BBC and to have my own channel as well on the side, kind of thing, and that's totally unimaginable in the past. But also, we've mentioned a couple of examples, for example, with the adolescence film, and there are other storytelling feature films, forms of fiction writing as well, which I think are often portraying reality even better than we manage to do as journalists all the time. And brilliant films being made, feature films, series being made, portraying our societies very truthfully, even in a fictional form. So Again, staying with that fictional and that optimistic note, is just I feel constantly inspired.
I think one element we haven't touched upon, and it relates to the, again, technological breakthrough. You touch on the positive side. I would say on the neutral side, there is now an increased competition. Journalists are not the only ones who can do the business and who can deliver to the audiences the type of content that is in demand. And I would look very closely for what politicians are actually doing, because in order to bypass journalism, they are competing, but they are also showing certain niches, or that was sort of something I tried to convey in a different way, the supply and demand thing. So there are stories, and there are stories that people relate to, that journalists, for whatever reason, might not be the first, or may not be the most compelling storytellers. And I think this is the room to compete for and to claim the territory in a way, and not let go. Because if you let go, well, the type of those who can dominate the discussion, and they are very good at communication and storytelling. They have a quite a good playing field for themselves now. So it's a hard competition, and just go and fight and win it.
Liam, do you want to give it? I was reflecting on some things that my colleagues from Moldova have said this morning, and also what you said now, which is that perhaps there are three things that the Austrian media landscape or problems really shares with the region. In many ways it doesn't, because Austria is a country with Western European institutions, albeit with maybe Central and Eastern European orientations, and economically and politically and so on. And we have a very diverse and healthy newspaper landscape and so on. But one problem is Austrians don't want to pay for news online, I would say. And there have been attempts to have sort of member-based online news outlets that have largely failed. So that's one. And many, for example, the best newspaper in the country is free online. So the standard, in my opinion. Yes. So other newspapers are available. So that's one issue. The dominant role of the public broadcaster is something colleagues in Austria are always concerned about, principally those who don't work for the public broadcaster. It is the dominant player in television, the dominant player in radio, the dominant player, or a dominant player online via their news website. And it is also obviously funded by the household levy, so they have a guaranteed source of income. That potentially needs to be revisited in some way. And the other thing I wanted to say, is media independence. Austria is a country of 9 million people. It has a diverse media landscape, but not because you can really sustain that per se, but because there are state subsidies for media outlets. That is tied now because of reforms to quality controls. But there are also indirect subsidies, and that means government advertising placed in newspapers. And you don't need me to tell you that parties are more likely to place advertisements in newspapers that they like. And this was the thing that, of course, actually brought down Chancellor Sebastian Kurz in 2021. So correct me on that one. In that it turned out that the short version is that the finance ministry was paying a polling company for basically sexed up polling data that then was being placed in newspapers friendly to Sebastian Kurz. So I think I don't know what you can do about sort of the direct subsidies, but indirect subsidies that then is a real issue.
Or need some more time to collect your.
No, at the same time. Well, on that very subject, in Poland we had a period where the government and state-controlled companies were spending a lot of advertising with outlets which were under direct control of the ruling party. But unlike in Austria, it didn't cause a scandal and no heads rolled because of that. So yes, the issue that really is a threat here, more than, let's say, far right or far left ideologies making inroads into the political discourse or even coming to power. I think that the biggest problem is state capture in general. That once they're in power, some of these parties use that power to not only capture institutions such as the judiciary or nominally independent state regulators, central banks, whatnot, but also the public media. And this was, in Poland, this was unprecedented since the communist times, the level of capture of public media. And you know, that was an experiment in a sense in state propaganda. But the positive story is, like in the communist times, that propaganda in the end did not permit and that capture of the media and the financial flows related to it. It did not keep the ruling party in power. And I think, you know, this is what to me is an encouraging thought, that at the end of the day, when policies fail and when corruption becomes so evident, people will vote. And as long as they can vote, they will vote out the government which is not delivering. In Poland, in the elections in 2023, in the general election, they will correct me because I will probably get the number wrong, but I think it was 75%. 75% turnout. This was the highest turnout, election turnout, since the collapse of communism in any election in Poland, because there was just so much anger with the policies, with the corruption, with state capture, with some specific policies as well. But generally, this was just a popular revolt against the way the government was going about the business. It was less about ideology. It was less about whether this was right or center or left. It had more to do with this pervasive state capture. And I think we're witnessing the similar phenomenon in Hungary now, where despite rigging the field and despite state capture by Orban, he's now under a serious political threat. And to a certain degree, a similar thing is happening. I think, in Serbia, as I mentioned before. Whether that brings real change remains to be seen. But I think, based on Poland's example, the positive message from all of this is that sooner or later, a vibrant society, civil society, independent media, holding the ruling class to account, even if they capture this public media, sooner or later the king is naked.
Was it just the case in Poland that the people who voted PIS, the party itself, emphasized two things, and correct me if I'm wrong. One, that they were religious, that they were mainly Catholic, and they thought that religion was above everything else, including politics. And secondly, that they were for a family, not a family, as people were saying, where the husband beats up the wife and gets drunk every night, but a decent family. They were for these two things, and they saw them as being endangered by the liberals who were coming in. Is that an adequate? It's not a defense really of PIS, but it's a kind of description of what they saw themselves as being, or is that wrong?
To a certain degree, that is correct. but there was much more than that when you're trying to analyze their victory in 2015. Part of it was that the previous government became tired and exhausted, and people craved change after the financial and economic crisis, which Poland actually sailed through pretty well. But nevertheless, people were tired of the crisis, and the opposition, Law and Justice, promised change. They didn't exactly formulate what that change is going to be, but certainly they promised change, and that certainly helped them. What undid them was that they didn't promise a revolution, however, they carried out a revolution after they seized power. And that revolution touched on every single aspect of life, not just the things you mentioned, like more traditional politics, more family values, more church, more religion. That was just the facade. But there was no aspect of life that they didn't touch and turn upside down. And initially they were given some benefit of the doubt, some credit. Poland continued to grow economically, so that certainly helped. But from the moment when some of these ideological issues, for example, women's rights, they just went one bridge too far, things started unraveling. And then, of course, state capture, corruption, embezzlement, patronage systems, the independent media. And Poland's advantage was that there was a lot of private and independent media that were able to counterweigh the capture of the public broadcasters. So many of these scandals saw the light of day, and gradually that eroded the support for the ruling party. So it wasn't so much ideology. I would make an educated guess, and Wojciech will correct me if I'm wrong. You know the saying about 3 Poles in a room and 4 points of view. So I'm sure Wojciech will amend my interpretation. But
it's actually about Israelis.
Yeah,
okay,
it's about-
Poles and Israelis, you know, what's the difference? So my educated guess would be that Law and Justice would have probably ruled to this day had that revolution not gone too far.
Can you pass the microphone off to your left? Do you want to come in on?
Not particularly, but
All right.
since I have the microphone, yeah, at the end of sorry, at the end of the day, everybody sees that the emperor is naked, you say, and there is hope in this statement of yours. What if all this anger, as it happened in Romania, is directed towards somebody like Călin Georgescu, who is taking credit from the people, unhappiness, let's say, from the people of justified anger, and we were facing the risk of having Călin Georgescu as president. So the question that we should ask to ourselves is, what can we do as mass media to prevent such things, to replace a naked emperor with a new fake emperor? Because Călin Georgescu, as Nick said, he knew how to sing. Everybody needs validation. Every human being needs validation, needs to find an identity, to be respected. Romanian people felt deeply, a part of the Romanian people felt deeply unrespected by the political party, by a part of mass media, as I said, which said they are stupid, they are. And Călin Georgescu sang on their language. He petted them, saying, you are the greatest nation in the world. You invented, I don't know, gunpowder. Danish people come from the Dax. He made Romanian people to feel very, very important. People who were despised by the social democrat parties, for example. Socialists in Romania are saying they respect people, but no politicians are so obviously obscene rich as social democrats. And one of the former leaders, Liviu Dragnea, Romanian people, everybody knows who Liviu Dragnea is, went up to saying to a Romanian, you are nothing in a press conference. And every middle-class Romanian felt like nothing that moment, felt despised. So Călin Georgescu came and betting the Romanian people, giving him validation, singing on the language, almost got president. So we should ask, what can we do as mass media to prevent such things? Because mass media didn't write about Călin Georgescu. We knew as a publication about Călin Georgescu since 2 years ago. We were speaking about this, but we were, I don't know, one voice, and we didn't write a lot, to be honest. But we should have seen it, and we should have seen it not necessarily Călin Georgescu. Maybe we could not see it, but we should have seen the wounds of this nation, because this nation has deep wounds from the communists, from the social democratic, from the political parties, which made us feel like nothing. And we should have seen as mass media the wounds of these people and try to speak their language, try to prevent such a phenomena. You were talking about regional mass media that should cover stories of the people, but there is almost no regional mass media, independent regional mass media. Of course, there are few publications, but regional mass media depends on the public financing. If they are critical to the politicians, they get no money, they get nothing. And to write about the people's problems, to be near the people, to hear their voice, you need staff, you need personnel. To pay it with which money? It's a vicious circle we are turning around.
I have to bring an example from my 2011 trip to US. It was just after financial crisis. It was like a propaganda trip by State Department for individuals. And I visited the newsroom of then the San Francisco Chronicle, so one of the big ones on the East Coast, and it was basically shutting down. It was 1/10 of the staff. Editorial board was basically taking the numbers from the social media charts, saying this is going to be our line, going by the most popular article that is popping up, and they were actually waiting to be shut down, and financial decisions would drive most of their thinking. And then the next place I visited was a community college newspaper, and the community college newspaper, basically only thing they had. In fact, well, there was a newsroom and a number of computers, but the type of energy and the quality of production of this community newspaper, of covering the whole region, the whole county, they were covering the county, was just incredible. And you didn't need the budgets, you just needed young people who believed, and I don't know what their story was later, but it was a reproducing model in which young people were jumping on the ship and spending a couple of years of their life, not for money, but doing the mission. Sure, if you want to keep up and you need to invent financial models, maybe you will invent it, but journalism is definitely not about the money.
Yeah, we have such publications also, but they are not enough to cover the need.
Can you pass to Alison? Alison, do you want to come in on this?
No, she doesn't want to come.
Pass to Mark.
Compulsory. Okay, so just for fun, since you put me in this position, I would like to provoke Wojtek, if I can. So, first, you said a couple of things that are really interesting. So the first, the community newspaper, we've all seen, I ran a small newspaper in Russia. It was an amazing experience. You had all these brilliant young Russian journalists who worked for, small amounts of money. It was fantastic. It's more or less dead now. These things need to be sustained. And yeah, it is about the money. It's great if everyone could just volunteer. And as students, we volunteer. My first job at the Independent, I worked for nothing because they weren't hiring, and then they eventually paid me, but I couldn't have done it. I couldn't still be working for nothing. So it is ultimately that money. And the second thing I'd quite like to provoke about, but at one point you said something which really struck me, which was, we talk about democracy, but it's also propaganda. It's an ideology. And it made me think, and democracy is definitely, it's a political system and has an ideology, therefore. So definitely that's true. But surely propaganda requires an element of untruth. So you need to be pushing something that, if you would just telling a story that was factual and so on, it needs an extra element. And I'm not sure. In fact, I think democracy is the one thing. What we should be doing as journalists is deciding what it is. What is the hill you die on? And the hill you die on is free speech and a democratic process, I think. Everything else about, ideas and ideologies, about whether you're left or right or family or whatever, you may have very strong opinions, but that's not what we should all be dying on. We should have different opinions about that and write for different newspapers that say completely different stuff about it. But it seems to me that that is the one thing that you're talking about. Why are we afraid of, Georgescu? Why? Yes, we had a rescue in Poland, and that's great. It shows that the process was still working. In Turkey, that process is not going to work because Erdogan just put his main rival into jail, and he will make sure that it doesn't work. In Russia, it's not going to work. It's the reason that the Ukrainians are fighting from many of their points of view. So I would just say that, I think it's a little. I wouldn't say that, when we talk about democracy, that's propaganda. It equalizes it, and it's almost, justifies the Russian point of view that that we're no different from you. The system we have is no different from yours. You're just pretending. It's cynical. It's not. You don't have to die as an opposition politician in Poland or in the UK or whatever. You don't have to get killed. You don't have to be put in jail. And you can. There is a prospect of at some point, having a change of rule. So anyway, that's a bit of a ramble, but it just struck me. You made me think. I'm just having thought.
You want to reply to this well, sure.
No, thank you. And I wouldn't say that I have all the answers, but thanks, Mark, for reflecting on those. There was a provocation in what I said, of course, but let me bring another set of, points to the conversation. Yes, I agree. There's money, and I would advocate publicly, but not in this particular circle, for money for journalism. Elsewhere, I would. But in here, I would say it is about service. And if it is, and I'll be revolving to one key idea that actually we talk about over coffee or cigarettes outside. This is about like military service. The question is, will Democrats die for democracy? The problem in most modern democratic societies is, and that's Gallup poll from last year, for instance, saying most Democrats will not declare, at least. I don't know what people would do if their country is attacked. But what most Democrats say in our societies is that they will not die for their own country. They will not die for their own values, set of values. They will not fight, or they will not declare they will not fight. And then, I think this is, that is the heart of a problem. So what if we look at journalism as service? What if we look at it as a mission? What if we look at it as something you don't need to do for money for life, although I it's a great admiration and respect if you can, but a service. And this is why I was bringing, or at least I'm still trying to understand whether there is something in this community model in which year after year you have different students coming in, and they're just, it's like it's a relay, yes. So you pass on, but essentially you do your duty or service or engage. It just makes me think, and I don't know if this is the answer, and of course there's money question in it, and when we go out of the room and we talk to big guys with big money, well, we'll certainly say them that this journalism needs funding, because otherwise you will get terrible results. On the issue of ideology and propaganda, and of course you speak English much better than I do, and propaganda has these elements of dubious elements that we don't like. But if I reflect on the at least Polish meaning of how we read propaganda, the original is to propagate, to spread, to deliver, and I think it's somewhere there. And I'm reading here in my mind Maria Resa's Stand Up to Dictatorship. There are like 6 or 7 recommendations that I can recall. But first one, and absolutely, as you said, this is about truth and about facts. This is how you stand up to dictatorship. Then it's about community, building communities and for resilience. This is about being assertive to temptations and kind of these moral questions. But then she goes on, be tech savvy, go and spread, be better at it, at doing the technical thing, which is propagate the news. You need to be a fighter there. And I think that's at least what I tried to, go in which direction I tried to go.
I don't think I agree with your metaphor of the relay, but it did make me think of 2 things, which is that, in interviews, Susan Sontag always used to talk about not her work, but the work. And that sounds very self-important, and indeed she was. But the idea, of course, is that the things that she did, the essays that she wrote, the novels that she wrote, were more important than herself. And I think, that's actually a good way, if I may say so, to view journalism. You have to think of the work that you do as being more important than yourself, that there's a kind of a larger or a higher purpose to it. And the second thing is that Christopher Hitchens always used to say that the reason he was a journalist or a writer is because he couldn't envisage doing anything else. He didn't want to do anything else. And that's partially how I also view what I do. I am a journalist and a writer because I don't want to do anything else and can't imagine doing anything else. And that will help you in an industry where, as everyone has said repeatedly, there is very little money anymore. It's hard to make a living. But I think that the knowledge that you're doing the thing that you need to do, not that you want to do, but you need to do it, will sustain you when you keep getting these emails saying, we'll pay you chicken scratch to write this article about a very important topic.
I just wanted to take up one further thing about what Mark said, Wojciech alluded to, and that is that what you were saying, it seemed to me, but correct me if I'm wrong, is that journalists, to be a journalist, a proper journalist, is to accept democracy. That's fundamental to the nature of being a proper journalist. You must work in and support and be part of a democratic system.
I think ultimately that's correct, but not because the causal relationship works in that direction, but simply because in a non-democratic, the experience says that in a non-democracy, we will not be able to as true journalists. So if we don't know a system, if you're in China and you want to be a journalist as a Chinese journalist, you cannot, it is not a journalism that I'm questioning.
Isn't journalism older than democracy?
Expand on that.
Well, I mean, there were lots of writers and journalists who were reporting on events accurately before much of the Western world became democratic.
You're talking of Plato and people like that.
No, I was talking about, let's say, Britain, I think human rights and freedom are essential for journalists.
Think of the journalist before there was democracy in these
chronicles, people who describe events,
These are
pamphlets that were changing the course of political discourse. They were influencers.
But I don't think the journalists. I mean, there was
press
and the chroniclers.
Just again, just a word, Mark. You may well be right, but you can imagine, say, a society in which everything is socialized, belongs to the state. It's a socialist, communist, but at the same time, the leaders of that say However, journalism is free to say, to do, to protest as much as it likes. Do you think that's possible? Or is de facto journalism allied to not just to a democracy, but to a capitalist democracy?
So I don't think it's a science. I just would say that if we had a socialist society in which there was a free press, I would say, great, it succeeded. We have a true socialism that succeeded. It's just that without the separation of powers is implied in the fourth estate, I don't think we've succeeded in having a free press without the separation of powers. So I think we've got there. I think that's what, as journalists, I think to me, that's what I feel is the hill for me to die on, is the one that says there has to be a separation of powers that allows for it. And I can't see a system certainly not worked in a country that had without democracy, without freedom, from freedom of election, where you also had a free press that could operate properly. I've seen it die in the process, like in Russia. I've seen it, there was, we went from no free press to a very problematic but very vibrant press, to no free press again. And in Turkey, I've seen the same thing. And what should happen? It's my experience, my personal experience is I haven't seen one without it.
That seems to be the point. We haven't seen it. We can imagine a wholly socialist society with a free journalism. We can imagine it. It might work, but in fact, what experience shows us is that capitalism can tolerate criticism, arguments for socialism, arguments for communism. It can tolerate it. But a socialist society, a wholly socialist society, could not tolerate arguments for capitalism. That seems to be the experience shows.
Yes, and to date, and I'm utopian enough to wish for the socialist society.
Even from Bloomberg.
It would be great.
Well, it depends how great it would be, yeah.
It just, until now, it hasn't really worked out.
Anyway, enough of capitalism and socialism. It's down to you as well to come in and say, what did you think? What struck you most about this conversation? There's another 2 conversations tomorrow on other issues, but what's it like so far?
I would say something.
Please,
I didn't want to.
for God's sake, yes.
Okay. So, Wojciech, I was thinking about what you said like a few minutes ago about journalism as a mission. And yeah, it sounds good, but it's also like a bit of kumbaya to me because I understand the comparison between military service and journalism in theory, but military service accepts basically everybody to join them. Except if maybe you're a transgender person in the United States, but that's a different thing. Whereas in journalism, it's quite difficult to break through the job if you're a young person, and I say this having been through this myself, and I think many young people in the room could probably say that they had similar experiences. And there's like, in Romania at least, every year there's hundreds of journalism graduates and most of them don't make the cut because there's not enough jobs for everybody. And I was lucky enough to start working on the job like a month after I graduated, and that has offered me enough experience to keep doing it, and now I can actually write about the things I like to write. At first I was doing economic journalism for 2 years and it was dire, but now I can actually write about what I like, and I understand that this thing, and I'm speaking about my position right now and the position of the youth in the room as well, is one of privilege that many don't get to have. Especially because there's not enough jobs, there's not enough financial possibility for many newsrooms to engage, what's the word for, to employ young people. And that's a very big issue because at some point they get caught in this vicious circles, as you said, and they run around the same narratives and the same stories, and there's no innovation, if I can call it that, in newsrooms, and that's a big issue. And I hope that most of you here that are seasoned journalists have like the possibility to mentor a young person, or that you're doing this already, and if you're not doing it, I hope you can consider doing that, because it's very important. And this leads me to my second point, which is our job is very important, but it doesn't have to be mysterious. And I think it's important to incite in the people that are not part of this job the need to do their own journalism. I don't know, grassroots journalism, which I think would be extremely beneficial to the society as a whole. And if we could put more accent on media education, at least I'm starting to lose my faith in the older generations, but at least for the youth, this is lacking. It's not in the school curriculum, it's not there, and there's pressures being made from the NGO environment, but it's not happening. So I think being able to introduce more media education for the youth would be a great priority for us, if we can do it. Because I would be gladly volunteering to teach some kids about how to, I don't know, segment their feeds or whatever when it comes to social media, for example. I could do that, but I think this needs to be a concerted effort, and it needs to happen quickly, because if it doesn't, we're left with the consequences that we're already seeing in the political landscape and so on. It's like a huge snowball that's never going to stop unless we put more accent on media education in the youth. That's what I wanted to say.
Is not social media the journalism of people who are not journalists?
Yes and no. I mean, it's open to everybody, that's correct. And many things that happen in social media could be classified as journalism, but social media is algorithmic also. I myself never considered reading news on social media to be a way of informing yourself, because as I said, it's algorithmic. It feeds you what it wants you to see. No matter if it's a news story that you legitimately believe in or that contains information that is correct, it's algorithmic, so it's always going to feed you what you like and what you are going to be more prone to keep more time on scrolling. So that's the issue there. But it could be, I mean, there's several initiatives made by young people in Romania, like journalistic initiatives that happen solely on social media and are really successful and that I really respect. But they're dispersed. It's not a concerted effort, and as long as this is going to keep happening like this, I don't see a solution to the problem of, okay, we're having so many people that believe this and that, but the actual cause is not being tackled, not by the government, which is even worse, but not by the mass media either, in a way that would be satisfactory for my own taste at least.
Ah, I'm sorry. My God, you're coming in late. It's time. It's almost time for dinner.
I want to add something as my colleague what you're saying about being a young journalist nowadays.
I don't think it's working.
Okay, speaking about how is to be a young journalist nowadays, because I know that here we have a lot of journalists with experience, but speaking about us, the newest, it's a bit hard because almost every time when I speak with a politician and try to get a reaction, a point of view, and call them for this, they are answering me and saying that, I understand through your voice that you are young, you are new in this field and you still don't know a lot of things, and I don't think you understand how the things are really going, and you should put this kind of questions. Or another time when I call a politician and just keep asking questions, maybe some simple question or more complicated, we ended to the point that he was telling me that stop asking, because if so not, there will happening things that neither you and I want to happen. And I don't know how this sounds to you, but for me it just sounds like a threat. And for example, and I'm sure that my young journalists are supporting this point of view, where view from the politicians like being new, being unexperienced, being easy to discourage doing this job.
Is this the way that Romanian politicians speak to journalists?
Yes, especially with younger ones. Like, you don't know things, you don't know how the things are working, and especially that I'm from Republic of Moldova and I'm working in Romania. They understand from my accent that I'm coming from the country near, and say like, why do you know about how the things are going in Romania as you are from Moldova? And this is how things are really going when I try to speak with politicians for asking for action.
Thanks. Who's next?
There's one other.
Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you. So I want to give an even more in-depth view of this youngster view, because I am currently a student, a second-year student at the Faculty of Journalism in Iași. And Iași is a smaller school of journalism. So we do not have the opportunities that maybe the Bucharest School of Journalism has. And also, I must say, you pointed out that journalism should be a mission. I can say for sure that maybe 99% of my colleagues would never see it as a mission. For them, it's just a job like, I don't know, PR or marketing. And with this in mind, I can assure you that if there isn't any financial motivation for youngsters, they will never see it, at least 1% as a mission. For us, at least in Iași, most of our jobs that point out after finishing school are in local press, which is also something that I wanted to stress when this came up. Because in local press and in Iași, there is this segment of press that is mostly PR for political parties and for certain companies. And I can also assure you that if this happens and students go there, they will never see journalism as a mission or as a social service, especially because most of them do not end up working there. So this is my view on this. Sure.
No, that's true. Don't know if this works. I'll shout. But it's a really, I mean, I'd say like very few brief things, because I feel quite strongly about that. So first is, if that 99% who don't feel it's a mission, they'll never do anything worthwhile in journalism. They'll never be happy because they'll never make money. I don't actually see any great loss if they never go to become journalism, because as we say, this is actually not a big industry anymore. So that's one thing. But the other thing is, I remember very clearly, so I was running a small newspaper in Russia, and we had to hire people. And we hired people, this was in the 90s, and we were hiring people, and I would talk to them, and I would say, well, we'd like to come to the VSG or whatever it was, and they would say, and I would say, we can pay you double your salary, and then they would say, well, it's going to have to be 4 times. So why does it have to be 4 times? Because my salary includes all of my payments from the people I write about. And so we then made a policy of never hiring anybody who had ever worked for a newspaper in Russia. And some of them were, really interesting people, and it's a shame. But I do think that it's almost a black and white issue that we need to know. I think the first question that anyone needs to ask when they're going into journalism, what am I doing? Because it's not going to be money. And if you're in print, it's not going to be fair.
But it will never be enough that way. For me, for example, journalism is a mission. I work 6 days per week, even 7 days per week. The salary is not very big, and none of my friends understand me. They say, you are stupid, you should go find another job or go to another mass media and make more money, go to vacations and so on. But if we were to hire people, no one would come, maybe not no one, maybe he will come, but most of the people will not come because the first question they ask is, how much will you pay me? And that's the first question.
Well, it's a reasonable question.
We cannot give them big money. We
No,
try
no.
to have more people to cover more stories, to speak to the people, to make great stories, to do our job better, but we cannot. Only 1%, yes, for only 1% the journalism is a mission, but that 1% of very few people who are studying journalism will not change a country. Will change it.
Okay, there's a right at the back there.
Not everybody can be Anna Politkovskaya, I'm sorry, but
I'll come to you next. First here, then back.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, well, at the moment it's talking, so I'll go like this. Regarding the financial aspect of journalism, because this is where we started with, and then I want to come back to combine a few points that I think need to be tackled a bit more. I don't think that the issue is one regarding the perspective and our perspective when entering the market, because it's basically reasonable to want to sustain a living and will follow your passion. And I think that we can all agree upon this. At the same time, I think that one thing that we should focus on is to find out where we can get some money from in order to support this, because this is a systematic issue, and until the whole, I think the society realizes that it requires journalism if we want to support democracy, then we can only complain. But what we have to do is make people understand, including business and everyone, understand that our mission is actually important for democracy. And I think this gets to my second point, and the fact that and probably my colleagues can also support this viewpoint. We very often hear, why does it matter? Why do you do this? It doesn't matter that you write this article. It doesn't matter that I go and vote or that I go informed. A vote doesn't count. An article doesn't count. And I think that this is an issue that comes natural with the fact that society developed and we are no longer living in a republic so as Athens was 2,000 years ago. And it's impossible to do so. But I think that what we do need to feel is empowerment, actual empowerment, and to start with, okay, media education is one side, political education and civic education is also lacking because we are too afraid of doing politics in school. And we were also talking about history at some point, and the fact that until we actually acknowledge our past, we can end up in very terrific situations. And this is the reason with social media and what happens nowadays is the fact that we as journalists face so difficult barriers when trying to deliver the message. And I wanted to complete Marianella's viewpoint. It's not only the politicians that don't reply to us, but even when we have a material, and I think that all the press hubs that are here and are also very present on social media face this issue. It is very difficult for us to deliver the message and the quality content on social media and to make it reach people, even young people, whose attention span is so affected by TikTok, and we aren't patient enough to get informed, and I'm not sure what press hubs can do better than this, and it is very frustrating because it's a mission that we want to follow, but one, we don't know where the money could come from, and two, even when we have a material and we are in a fortunate situation where a politician actually answers our question and we can establish this dialogue, how do we deliver the message? Because at this point there is, we are facing algorithms and bots and we are trying to expose misinformation, but it's much more difficult for us without the money that certain disinformation campaigns actually have. And it's the same, it's what was very well put in about the Russian propaganda versus the
Moldova.
Yes, and the independent press there. So I think that we should also try to tackle both the financial and the issue about education and attention span, and I think this is a very important issue that I haven't heard being addressed as much as it should.
Questions down there.
May I hijack this microphone? Okay. 3 seconds, please. For the younger ones, there's a mentorship happening here in Ratio Foundation. I'm part of the mentorship, and there are other good journalists, important journalists like Emilia Sherkan and several others that are mentoring young journalists. There are people here that have been to the mentorship before. So if you're interested, I don't know, let's keep in touch about this later on. Thank you.
So, do I need a microphone? Do I need a microphone? Yeah, okay. I just want to make a confession that not so many times, not so much. 2 or 3 years ago, I was asked what was I doing my professional life, and I avoided to assume the fact that I was a journalist. I was very happy with the kind of journalism I did, but I felt ashamed to assume this because the image of the journalist in Romania is confiscated by the most visible journalists, so-called journalists, appearing on some TVs are imposing to the population. So this kind of fake journalism, propagandists, they are propagandists, yes? And they're very obvious and it's a shame for the profession that they exist in this position, in this such a visible position. But this is a symptom. This is a symptom of the level of corruption in media that exists since the very beginning of the media. We have we can call it the Academy of Blackmail. It was a network of newspapers which developed a mechanism to blackmail businessmen to get publicity, etc. And this created a parallel community of so-called journalists, and the successful material journalists are in principle living in this huge industry of corruption, which is called, I won't tell the names because I'm engaging an institution, so I never say words like Antena or Realitate or România. So don't, I won't pronounce these words, but these are very visible institutions, and they are imposing a brand of shameful profession that it's very difficult to assume that you are a journalist. Now, the positive reaction that exists in the society and in this profession is that journalists started to develop independent platforms. And in the last, I would say, 8 years, just before the pandemics and during the pandemics, they grew, and they proved that this kind of journalism starts to be sustainable, economically sustainable. There is zero chance to be a journalist just because you are very well motivated, because you need a body to contain the positive motivation, and the body needs food. So imagining this kind of motivation for journalists, for the mission of a journalist, with ignoring the material resources is not realistic. So the fact that now we have some platforms, and I let you identify them, that they exist, they function, they make some money, not much money, but they do what they love to do. And this is the hope and the this should be the direction to invest mostly. And I totally agree with the fact that we need an educated public, because this is a biunivoc relation. So media education is vital to train public to consume what's healthy. Thank you.
I think nobody else is.
He agrees.
Somebody else is coming in.
Ask a
Yeah.
question? So I'm not a journalist, but I would like to ask, what can journalists do in an era where people don't want to be informed anymore? As you have discussed earlier, the Moldovans that watch Russian television, they say, oh, but I don't watch the news, I only watch entertainment. But they are getting their informations from those sources of entertainment. And what can serious journalists do when they want to inform a public that doesn't want to be informed anymore?
Good question.
I want to answer if he wants to answer. Yeah, I want to answer.
Okay. So the short answer is better journalism. There are stories that you cannot avoid. You simply cannot avoid. Not even the crook press, Mitch, I was talking about, can avoid this kind of, think about, let's take the last 3 years, 2 years. You had the Nordis investigative report made by NEDA recorder, right? You had what your guy, well, it was before. You had that Ziarul de Garda thing, absolutely amazing. To me, the best investigative work last year by far. Do the others know what I'm talking about? No. It was an investigative journalism piece done by two ladies that entered a scheme of bribery for votes for Shore. Did I describe it correctly? Yeah. Pro-Russian, now it's clear, right? No one, why don't you know about this? I mean, it's a 23-year-old girl that followed, I don't know, route to enter this scheme, and she actually got the money, cash. And so she's a 23-year-old girl. Like, I don't know, she's 40 kilograms or something. So she's 23, something like that. Okay. So, come earlier. Okay, I didn't want to say. Okay, the story with the centers, Gabi Firas people, elderly people being killed in an asylum, in 3 asylums basically close to Bucharest. It was impossible not to know about this at that point. It was impossible.
Or the one about the bishop you wrote.
Well, no, I don't want to do that about me. Really, I don't want to do that. But there are stories that cannot be avoided. So
I know people around me that know nothing about any of these stories.
no, I don't trust you. Not about all. They know nothing about neither of them.
Just very short. I'll make it short. Yeah. There is. I discovered years ago that topics of public interest are not interesting for the public. It's a paradox. If you don't know how to sell them, you can package dry information in a way which makes it entertaining. And then you manage to cross this barrier of people uninterested by serious things. You sell them this serious thing in a sexy way.
And also, like the colleague said before, the attention span. It's usually these reports are long to read. You need time. You need to spend half an hour, 1 hour, maybe.
Yeah, but
People don't have. They don't concentrate.
Yeah.
They don't focus enough.
I understand what you're saying, but if something is really difficult, you cannot write it in Instagram like Jane Steer, as Mircea says. I'm not talking about, it's impossible to do that. It's impossible. You just simply cannot do that. But what also Mircea says about selling the thing, this is journalism. This is also, this is not marketing. This is journalism. Okay? So if you do journalism properly, you know how to sell. Because you do it properly. I don't know how to explain. I'm sorry. So if okay, you may fail once, you may fail twice. I've failed a lot of times, but again, it's not about me. There are good journalists that fail they have a huge story, a big story, but they don't know how to sell it. But eventually, you will understand how to sell it. And when you do, it's a big story, and it's impossible to be missed. This is my answer to this.
You're going to have the last. You're going to have the last word, I believe.
No, I don't deserve this.
Well, you got it. Not for the first. Not for the last time. It's now 6 o'clock. It's time for dinner. The arguments will go on, perhaps over dinner, perhaps tomorrow. But tomorrow we start again, same time as we started today. And thank you all for coming and for making it so interesting.